Following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
Valley, Movie Hollywood, where any office boy or young mechanic can be a panic with just a good-looking pan. And any barmaid can be a star maid if she dances with or without a plan. Hooray for Hollywood, where you're terrific if you're even good. Where anyone at all from Shirley Temple to Amy Semple is equally understood. Go out and try your luck.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premiere podcast, Damn You Hollywood. And here's your host, with a purposeful grimace and a terrible sound, he pulls a spinning high-tension wires down. Helpless people on subway trains scream bug-eyed as he looks in on them. He picks up a bus and he throws it back down as he wades through the buildings toward the center of town. Oh no, they say. He's got to go. Go, Robert Winfree. Ladies and gentlemen.
I knew it.
The Godzilla to my Kong, Robert Winfree. Roar.
A little bit racist.
Ow.
But I knew you were gonna. Somewhere in my head was he's gonna do Go Godzilla. You know he's gonna do Go Godzilla. And yeah, you Mark, you very rarely subvert expectations, and
I give the people what they want.
The irony being that you know the irony of that saying, right?
Give the people what they want.
The job of the artist is not to give the people what they want, it's to give them what they didn't know they wanted.
Oh, well, I've never said I was an artist.
And yet here we are.
Yet here we are.
Well, everybody, tonight, a little bit later start time for those of you watching live. We appreciate your patience, but life happens.
Yeah, my daughter didn't get out of chorus until 8:30.
We are discussing, Mark, it's been a month or two, right, since we've had a good movie?
Has it been that long? I don't know. I guess it's.
I'd have to go back.
I was going to say, I guess, well, Killers of the Flower Moon was the end of October. So
November.
Yeah. Well, in November, we had Ballad of Songs and Snakes, Wish, and The Marvels.
Yeah, so nothing really good.
So nothing since Killers of the Flower Moon.
And even before that October was weird. It was up and down. But I feel pretty confident saying, certainly one of the best movies we've talked about all year. I'm not calling for the best by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a good movie.
You know what I like about this? This show ticks. Godzilla Minus One is what we're talking about tonight, by the way. And Godzilla Minus One is a 2023 Japanese kaiju film. Directed, written, and with visual. I don't know why I went like quasi-French there.
Yeah, you've mispronounced that word before. You've never done it with that accent.
I feel like if I mispronounce things in other languages, it makes it sound correct. Takashi Yamazaki. Produced by Ho Studios and Roba Communications. And I'm just going full French now. And distributed by Toho. In the 37th film in the Gojira franchise, Toho's 33rd Gojira film, and the 5th film in the franchise's Reiwa era. The film stars a bunch of Japanese people. In the film, post-war Japan... That's a racism. In the film, post-war Japan deals with the emergence of Gojira. All right, Robert, as you were saying, this film ticks off several boxes. We had a pretty tight, very regimented schedule for many, many years. And that's mostly me being a benevolent dictator. But there was
Well, hang on. For certain values of mostly and only intermittently benevolent.
But we never. There was always like a conversation between you and I about being a slave to the mainstream media.
Well,
Worldwide box office bonanzas, and not having a lot of room in the schedule for anything else. Then COVID happened, and the streaming wars happened, and then we kind of experimented with a bunch of different things, and we started trying out stuff, and Alexa started pushing the Oscar nominated stuff on us, and then I got social, and I kind of just stopped doing a bunch of things, and my schedule, on the one hand, became more open. On the other hand, I was doing less, but that then gave me the ability to put stuff back if I wanted to. So the schedule, we have a rough sketch of what we want to do and when we want to do it, because we have to. But it also allows us a certain degree of jazz, a certain degree of flexibility to go, hey, I'm not going to get Pain Hustlers and The Killer watched in enough time to review them, because I've got other stuff going on. But I did take my kids to go see Godzilla Minus One, and you went, yes, and I'm going to go see Godzilla Minus One. So, hey, let's talk about a foreign film, one that's getting high praise, one that we would not have normally talked about before, and let's do that for Damn You Hollywood. And here we are talking Godzilla Minus One, which, like, if I had to have predicted movies we were going to talk about in January, this would not have been one of them. But here we are, and it's kind of fun.
it is. And if you'll indulge me for just a moment, you see, I appreciate the fact that you have a life and a family and, things. But I'm a professional.
You also have the memory of an elephant, so you could watch stuff 3 months in advance.
I did not. I watched it 2 weeks in advance. Let's not exaggerate. I did watch both The Killer and Pain Hustlers, again, a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ago. And if you'll give me just like 5 minutes, because I have to get at least one of these off my chest. The Killer's actually pretty good.
I'm gonna get to it. I'm gonna get to it sometime next year. I'm gonna force Sean to do a director focus on David Fincher. Probably do seven Zodiac and The Killer.
If you guys can find time to make that 4 instead of 3, you need to find the opposite number of The Killer.
Okay.
So here's my theory on David Fincher at this stage in his career.
Mm-hmm.
He is apologizing for everything he's done to this point.
Okay.
So if you listed 2 of the best examples. If we contrast 7 with Zodiac.
Mm-hmm.
7 is a deeply psychological, slick. When I say slick, I mean production value slick. It's a grimy city, but it focuses on one of those like mythological, very elevated serial killers.
Right.
And turns out the more we understand about not only serial killers, but pop culture and media illiteracy, that movie wound up having kind of the opposite effect that he intended. So what's he do? He makes Zodiac an almost slavishly accurate representation of a famous serial killer that delivers no closure, that is almost devoid of thrills, that is, again, like pure drama. And it's kind of an apology. Boy, I made serial killers look kind of cool. Here's what it's really like. The Killer is kind of an answer to something like, I can't remember everything. Somebody mentioned it, and I can't remember the specific movie that this is kind of his own response to later in life. This is kind of in a slightly different parlance, because I know he didn't make this movie, but this is kind of the anti-John Wick. If John Wick is super stylish, super stylized, hyper-violent, Revenge Tour, take a deep dive into this fictional world of assassins and shadow governments and blah blah. This is kind of the opposite. This is a little bit dealing with the mundanity of murder.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one what I would call genuine action sequence in the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much the character study is very subtle. Michael Fassbender's a good actor. It's also, the trope about how whenever you get one of these like movies with assassins or whatnot, the guy at the end pulling all the strings has some deep connection to the hero that we only find out about in the third act.
Yeah, Bullet Train.
What? Sure, there's a number of them.
That's the most recent one that comes to mind.
Yeah. Bullet Train wonderfully subverted it by having it not be the actual guy, but no, I get your point. In this case, like he confronts the guy. Like, the basic premise is he's hired to kill somebody. He misses. There's an insurance policy taken out by the person who hired him to then kill him, so that there's no, record of what happened. He's not there when they hit his house, but his girlfriend, female, there's somebody who is there who he cares about. So he tracks down and murders the two people responsible, finds the billionaire who hired him in the first place, and the billionaire looks at him and goes, "I'm sorry, who are you?" He goes, "Okay, look, he had me to do a job. Now, I just proved to you that I can get to you face to face. Do we have a problem?" Like, "No, I literally don't know anything about you. I don't know who you are. Whatever, man. Go be free." Okay, fine, we're good. But just so you know, if you ever do, I'm not going to come back here and I'm not going to shoot you. I'm going to break into your house when you're not here, and I'm going to cover the interior of one of your mugs with radioactive material. And then your face is going to melt off slowly. There's a lot of ways to kill people.
Sure.
So that one, again, the killer's
kind of reminds me of like Gross Point Blank, where he's like poisoning the person, but like doing it from the air duct.
Well, yeah, and you can very slowly use different kinds of radioactive material.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff like that. So the killer's fine. It's fun. We could have had a decent-ish discussion about it. Pain Hustlers is a waste of time.
Okay. It's one of those. I'm gonna say this, and then we're gonna briefly get into Godzilla. But it was one of those where a couple of years ago, I think post-COVID, we started paying attention to movies that were on like Netflix because they were getting a lot of buzz, and it was an array of stuff. It was just stuff people were talking about, or stuff that was getting nominated for Oscars. They were having like limited theater runs and stuff like that. And it was like you and I, especially when this had to have been 2021. But it was before theaters opened up again in large markets like California, because they'd already been Florida was open like 3 months after the lockdown started. We were one of the early ones where basically we were just like, "I dare you to COVID me," like that's Florida. But normal places.
Hey, look, man, your state handled that better than most. I'm not saying it was ideal. I'm saying better than most.
There was an in-between place between us, the guy, in the hurricane of COVID with no shirt on and an American flag, and in the gulag that was New York
Gulag, or California's police state.
Yeah. So anyway, there was a middle ground, is all I'm saying. But the world opened back. The large markets of the United States opened back up in March, and it kind of opened up with, oddly enough, Godzilla versus Kong, and like that weekend, even though that was day and date on Max. So, but between January and March, you and I had a long discussion about like we really need to start talking about some of these movies that are on streamers. A lot of them get a lot of buzz. That's why we ended up doing Extraction and Extraction 2, Flaming Hot, and then we did a bunch back then. We at the time we weren't necessarily. At the time, we were sort of experimenting with different formats. I hadn't started Triple Feature yet. So we were doing a bunch of different things. Like there were movies that Amazon had become a big player in the streaming market. Like they were just buying up movies left and right. And I didn't know it.
Yeah, Amazon Prime was still kind of coming along as far as the video service.
Right. And I didn't know it at the time. And I've learned this recently by listening to The Town and some other podcasts that a lot of movies that were meant for theatrical exhibition got killed. Because of COVID. And I guess because at the time, nobody knew what was going to happen with theaters. No one knew if we were ever going to open back up again, so, and they needed to make some money back. So a lot of movies that were slated for theatrical exhibition, first one being 2 that went to Amazon, was the Michael B. Jordan, Michael Clancy movie.
Tom Clancy.
Tom Clancy, yeah.
Yeah, that movie sucked. We reviewed it. It sucked.
It was awful. That was one I think we had Jeff on for. And then the other one was Coming to America 2, which Jason and I talked about.
You guys had fun talking about that.
Yeah, that was fine. Jason and I always have a good time talking about goofy movies. But so over time, I've tried to pay attention to what was going, especially if it's on Netflix, because that seems to be the place where most people pay attention to streaming movies. I try to watch more. I would do more. I would probably do more stuff from like Disney and Amazon and whatnot and Hulu. I just don't have the time, and we don't have the place in the schedule. So that's how Pain Hustlers ended up getting onto the schedule. It was, okay, I saw what this was. I was interested in the subject matter, and I figured it would be a movie people were talking about. I don't know if anyone actually did. I didn't catch any buzz on it. I caught more buzz about The Killer. But the other side of that is we have another show on this network, not on the Radulich Broadcast Network, but W2M, Movies That Don't Suck and Some That Do, and they have their own channel, but we syndicate their stuff here as a kind of a content sharing thing, favor to them, and they've already done The Killer. So I ran out of time. They'd already done it. I'll revisit it later, along with some other David Fincher stuff next year. But like I said, that brings us to Godzilla Minus One, since we, happen to have both seen it, and neither one of us necessarily wanted to skip a week of Damn You Hollywood. So here we are, and I got to tell you, in terms of speaking about specifically Godzilla, I was not a Godzilla kid. I was a King Kong kid, as we've talked about when we talked about Godzilla versus Kong.
Established this. It's a little weird. Your Kong fetish, a little weird.
I don't think I've seen any of the Toho Godzillas. In fact,
I assume you've seen the original Godzilla. No, the black. You ever seen the black and white Godzilla?
No, that's what I'm saying.
That one you need to watch.
I'm going to admit something now, and it's one of those things where, like, the record scratches, the guy stops playing piano, everyone in the bar stops and looks at you. I'm gonna say something. I'm gonna do my son right now. I'm gonna say something controversial. This might get me canceled. The first Godzilla movie I ever saw was the Roland Emmerich one. Yeah, Godzilla in name only.
The Godzilla community somewhat jokingly refers to him as Zilla. Because they took the god out of Godzilla.
G-Zilla, yo.
Just Zilla.
Now I want someone to recut the movie, but he's always wearing like a clock, and a top hat or something. I don't know why he had to be Flavor Flav for this bit, but now he does. just wrecking New York City. Matthew Broderick's like, oh my god. You turn back to him, he's like, yeah, boy. Just knocking over buildings. Anyway. Strangely enough, the only other Godzilla movie of the Toho variety that I ever saw was King Kong versus Godzilla.
We did commentary for the original. It was hilarious.
You, me, and Jesse did the commentary for that, like during Godzilla week. I've read a bunch of the comics, and I think when I was a kid, there was a brief run of Godzilla cartoons that I may have seen a couple of episodes over. But like I said, Godzilla, I have come to appreciate Godzilla in the MonsterVerse era, starting with 2014, Gareth Edward, I believe it was, Godzilla, which we never talked about, and we really should one day. But tell
you what, when New Empire bombs, we can hold a funeral and do a retrospective on the legendary Godzilla run.
Okay. Well, that's what I want to talk to you about for TikTok purposes. When was your first Godzilla? What was it? Why do you love the creature so?
I couldn't tell you my first one off the top of my head. I was young.
Mm-hmm.
I either saw it on TV or I saw a toy. And I would have been still single digits, probably when I was living in Oregon. I can actually still remember sort of vaguely like the layout of the Hollywood video rental that we would go to and where the Godzilla movies were, because I would go grab one of those.
Mm-hmm. What drew you to Godzilla?
It's a cool looking monster. I
No,
was like,
that's
I
a
was
very
8.
good
That's
answer.
it. It looked cool.
I was not expecting. Well, at 8 years old, I was very interested in the bombing of Hiroshima, and this was a metaphor. No, a cool monster is a perfectly good answer,
Yeah.
Robert.
Well, look, he was a very cool monster. He
Were you just
breathed
into monster movies in general?
a little bit.
Okay.
I love dinosaurs, so stuff.
Okay.
I like you can transition dinosaurs into monster stuff pretty easily.
It's so funny you say that because I'm sitting here thinking, what's wrong with me? Stop. What's wrong with me that I'm not drawn to Godzilla? And what's wrong with me is that I also am not drawn to dinosaurs. That's just that I was not the dinosaur kid. I was the robot kid.
Yeah,
So I loved Voltron, Transformers. I loved Robotech. I loved anything having to do with machines. And I was, weirdly enough, like I was never a good science student, but I was always into science stuff.
Yeah.
And that was appealing to me. So like there's two kinds of kids in this world, and there's the science and machine kid, and then there's the dinosaur and animal kid and monsters. And I was the former, not the latter.
So that's kind of where that transition came in. Again, I had
Mm-hmm.
not a great toy, but I one of them that, and some of those like Godzilla toys from like the early '90s, early to mid '90s, they look cool, especially if you're a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no real rhyme or reason to the order in which I watched some of them. I saw the first one probably when I was far too young to actually understand what was going on with it.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally, I wound up watching more like the stuff with Mecha Godzilla and some of the weird team ups, and for better or for worse.
Mm-hmm.
Case of Final Empire, much worse. But again, Godzilla's a very cool monster. Some of those kaiju battles that they got, depending on which era of the Godzilla franchise, the Godzilla like timeline we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
are like the best pro wrestling fights you'll ever see.
Just picturing Godzilla. Da, 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 da.
Yeah, Godzilla has hit a mean drop kick once or twice. Not even joking.
I've actually heard that. Was it Godzilla versus Kong or something else where he like slides on his tail and like hits you with his bottom feet?
I think there was one of those. Like again, there's
Mhm.
some goofy stuff that has taken place throughout the course of this franchise.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I kind of found that fairly early in life. They were brightly colored. They had monster battles. When you're 9 and you're watching guys in foam rubber suits kind of punching each other, and then you watch Mecha Godzilla unleash this barrage of missiles and laser beams and gunfire, and then Godzilla, a bloody mess, slowly picking himself up and then charging up and just nuking the guy. And if you're a little kid, this is the best thing ever.
So it's funny you say when you're a little kid. So my son, I may have mentioned him once or twice on here.
Oh wait, you have kids?
No, did you know? So he says father. He calls me father. He says father. This Godzilla. Put it on a t-shirt, Mindy. Godzilla Minus One. He's like, this is the one where Godzilla is a metaphor. This is him talking to me. Dad, don't you understand? Godzilla is a metaphor for the bombing of Japan. And I'm like,
very much talks with his hands, your son.
Yes.
Leans into your Italian heritage.
Have you seen his bit on Dunkin' Donuts where he's Joey Bag of Donuts from the block?
No, but I might have to look. I will look that up.
Oh yeah, him on Dunkin' Donuts. So I go into this Dunkin' Donut like he's Andrew Dice Clay. Anyway, but that's kind of what I want to transition to is Japan sort of collective trauma from the atomic age, the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
If I might
take over.
Well, if I might quote a friend of an occasional guest on the program, David Wright, not everything in Japan is about the bomb.
So what else does Godzilla represent for these people? Like, why Godzilla is more than just a monster movie. He's obviously sort of a timeless creature. He's woven into the fabric of international culture. There's a reason he has staying power. Besides him being a metaphor for atomic destruction, what else is there?
Well, the original is very much a metaphor about fear of the atomic age, right?
Sure.
That's that's very obviously what the first one is.
With respect to David Wright, he's my son, and everyone else isn't wrong about that, but there could be other stuff.
I only bring up the first one because Godzilla movies after that,
sure,
not so much.
Yeah, look, and look, I understand the Roland Emmerich one, is not a Godzilla movie. It's Godzilla in name only, but let us give the devil its due and say, it's a Godzilla movie, was also not necessarily a metaphor for atomic destruction. It was...
It's more like responsibility in a post-atomic age. Like, okay, we've put all this stuff out there. What do we do with it?
Yeah, I was, Roland Emmerich, the way that he sort of treated Godzilla was more of a don't wreck. It was an environmental message. It was kind of don't wreck the planet. Don't, very much like Independence Day. Roland Emmerich very, very much had a bee in his bonnet about destroying the planet. He has Jeff Goldblum's thing about using nuclear weapons. Yeah, like that was kind of Roland Emmerich's thing for a while. And Godzilla was more of a metaphor for don't destroy the planet.
Originally, Roland Emmerich was all, boy, I'm not sure we should destroy the planet, and pro-environmentalism, and now he's, what, screw you for getting remarried.
Well, I can sympathize. All right, so you were telling me
man, we've talked about this before, like, somewhere, Roland Emmerich makes a hard pivot towards, boy, do I resent my ex-wife, and more importantly, the man that married her after we got divorced.
I now want to pitch Roland Emmerich's Attack of the 50-Foot Woman.
I don't even want...
Oh God, I have storyboards in my head right now.
I insist this be a co-director. We need two directors for this.
Mm-hmm.
I need Emmerich and I need Greta. No, I need Roland Emmerich and Greta Gerwig to co-direct.
I just fucking said that.
I know, but that's what we need.
I'm down for this.
The brain trust. That is.
Oh my God! So the 50-foot woman's like knocking over buildings and yelling at the same time. Why won't more men date me? I need another boyfriend. That'd be great. I need a polyamorous Attack of the 50-Foot Woman.
No one needs that.
Oh, I do.
I hate that we put that out there.
Because it's gonna happen now. Roland, baby, call me. All right. Anyway, back to Godzilla.
We won't get it the way we want. Like, we will get the remake of Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, and for about 5 minutes, you'll be, yes, this is everything we wanted. And then, like, they'll announce that it's by director X or something, and you'll just be the most depressed person in the world.
Like, Brett Ratner makes a comeback, like, oh, fuck this movie.
Yeah, Brett Ratner's Attack of the 50-Foot Woman.
Okay, God, could you imagine what's his nuts from Age of Ultron? Josh Whedon's Attack of the 50-Foot Woman.
Really, what we need is Tarantino's Attack of the 50-Foot Woman.
It would be all feet.
I'm aware. Literally,
it would be like a Monty Python cartoon sketch.
No. It would be a woman comprised of 50 feet.
Got Uma Thurman just barefoot and knocking shit over.
I don't think she'll work with Tarantino again.
Well, it'll end up being Margot Robbie then, and her big ass feet. Anyway, somehow we got away from the central topic. What else does Godzilla represent in culture?
Well, the Godzilla franchise has been used to tackle a bunch of things. You have you have environmentalism that's thrown in different movies, like Godzilla versus, and then you have like poaching and piracy, Godzilla versus the sea monster. You have environmentalism with like Godzilla versus the smog monster. There's actually this is one of the less well thought of Godzilla movies in a lot of respects, but there's a pretty interesting discussion about the like Japanese culture and the family situation that goes on in what the heck was it? It's the one where we primarily follow a Japanese boy who's fantasizing about being on Monster Island.
Okay.
I can't remember the title off the top of my head, so forgive me. But this again, which is a really weird movie because Monster Island is a real place in the fictional setting that he then fantasizes about as well. So like, it's weird. But the Godzilla franchise, again, it's been used to talk about different things at different points in time because it's a very versatile thing. It's a little bit, and Godzilla's relationship with what's going on becomes it becomes a little bit muddled because
Mhm.
Godzilla is a very distinctly Japanese creature. Like this is where the creature comes from. It's part of. So in different times, Godzilla almost like represents how Japan comes together to fight things.
Mhm.
At other times, he is this unstoppable force of nature or man-made destruction that we must avoid or destroy at all costs.
It's
And
one of
he
the things I
vacillates depending on what's going on.
It was one of the things I really liked about this movie. Not to get ahead of ourselves, but and I don't know if this is the case with the other Godzilla movies. Obviously, not the sillier ones, but I've said a couple of times on here the misunderstanding about science fiction is that people think it's just fantasy and space. No, fantasy and space is space fantasy. It's not science fiction. There can be elements of
That's
fantasy.
that's what Star Wars is. Star Wars is space fantasy.
Yeah, there can be elements of fantasy in your science fiction, but ultimately, science fiction is something like The Martian, where you have a problem that needs to be overcome by your protagonist using science. A lot of Star Trek was more that than it was space fantasy. There were elements of space fantasy and in action in Star Trek. There had to be, but a lot of Star Trek was them being presented with a problem, whether it was a diplomatic problem or a scientific problem, and they were using science to solve the problem, to overcome the obstacle.
The other
And what?
the other thing about that is, do you want to know if your movie is science fiction or not? Well, how important is your fictional science to your story?
Right. If it's just gobbledygook, and nothing flows and nothing makes sense, you're not really using it to solve problems. It's not science fiction. And the nice thing I liked about Godzilla Minus One is this was very much a science fiction movie. They had a force of nature problem, and they were essentially overpowered, overmatched. And so they said, okay, well, with the resources that we have, what do we do to solve the problem? How do we get this creature subdued enough to stop attacking? And that is the impetus of that is at least in part the impetus of this movie, which I think is interesting because the other thing I've noticed with Godzilla movies, especially the MonsterVerse movies, starting with the actual 2014 Godzilla, is that the take seems to be the world. There are monsters that exist in this world, and many of them wish to do us harm, and so there's nothing we can do to stop them. The monsters are too powerful. So instead, we need essentially, in order to deal with these New Jack criminals, what we need are some New Jack cops. And what they come to discover about Godzilla is that he is a New Jack cop. He is a protector of the people, sent to do battle with King Ghidorah. I think that's how you pronounce it. Ghidorah. And these other, creatures.
Step on the stupid monkey.
Yeah, these other creatures that are out there that are meant to do us harm. When did that become a thing?
Again, somewhat early. Godzilla's too cool. This is there's the old pro wrestling thing. Like, you don't want to be a cool heel because pretty soon you're not a heel.
Right.
Godzilla very quickly became too popular to be a villain.
Right.
In most respects. So again, they pivot to, well, here's other monsters, and they'll fight it out. And maybe you have a rooting interest, maybe you don't. But the monsters are fighting, and then the aliens come down, and Godzilla kind of becomes like one of the things that we have that aliens constantly want.
Mm-hmm.
Because King Ghidorah comes from outer space, right?
Right.
So another planet that's having a problem with King Ghidorah will frequently have some of its alien representatives show up here and go, "Can we borrow Godzilla?" And then they go to another planet and they have a space battle. This happens frequently.
Hey, listen, Al. I need you to go to Earth to rent a kaiju and go get one of them Godzillas.
This is one of those reasons I'm surprised you have not watched more Godzilla, because some of these are just so silly that I know it's right up your alley.
I'm gonna invest more time into this. All right, so let's get into Godzilla Minus One. Take it away, Plot McGee.
So Godzilla Minus One initially opens in the waning days of World War II, 1945, in the Pacific Theater, where we're introduced to our protagonist, who is a kamikaze pilot who really doesn't want to die. And that's an awkward combination.
Well, I just did a whole thing on the Pacific, and one of the things that Andrew and I talked about was these guys were taught to fly the plane and crash the plane, and that was about all they got. And so that was their job. And about
kamikazes.
99 out of 100 guys you can probably convince, do it for the Empire. There's always that one guy that's like, what am I up here? What am I doing?
Yeah, and the kamikazes only came about very late in the war because the Japanese Army/Navy could not sustain the attrition rate
Right.
to engage in essentially conventional warfare with the United States Navy. And they realized, for the cost of one plane, one human being, if we can incapacitate or take out an aircraft carrier, we'll do that.
But I mean, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but that, I don't think people understand the gravity of war and mobilization of your fleet or attack force. When you think about destroyers and carriers and what they represent, I mean, a destroyer is a very large ship with a lot of guns that can do a lot of damage, and a carrier is a floating base.
If you want to have, if you want to understand again a little bit about naval warfare, look up how long it takes to build one of these things. Like, if you lose one, you can't replace it for especially if we're talking World War II. I think the turnaround time for the average destroyer or aircraft carrier was start to finish. I want to say it was somewhere between 9 and 18 months.
Right. So if
you're building this thing for a while.
Right. So if you have a plane, and with that one plane you can sink a carrier, that's a major victory. That is essentially you've bombed an American base.
Yeah.
Because you don't just lose the base, you lose all the soldiers and all the equipment, all the supplies, and what's the other thing on there? Oh yeah, the other planes. Whatever it is you're got, if you hit one of the, and I can't remember what they're called, but the rafty things that would, that carry the troops on, that we used them in Normandy. You hit one of those things are like sardine cans full of soldiers. Knock one of those things out and you've lost an invading force. That's a huge win.
Yeah, but late in the war, that became a thing they were trying to do. So we have this guy who faked that there was something wrong with his plane, landed on a podunk airstrip on one of the islands, said, hey, there's something wrong with my plane. And he talks with some of the mechanics, and they're like, we can't really find anything wrong with his plane. Well, in the morning, he can go back out, but for now, there's no point in sending him back up right now. None of this is really a good idea. So they hang out for the evening, and that evening, Godzilla shows up. He is just wandering around the area. He climbs out of the ocean. This is smaller than he becomes. This is Godzilla about the size of regular King Kong, at 18 to 20 feet. So, horrifying, but not.
Have you ever been kayaking? Have you ever gone, traveled the length of a river?
Yeah, I've done both smoother water canoe trips, and I've done some whitewater rafting.
So you've probably been face to face, relatively speaking, with an alligator.
Alligator, no.
Okay.
But
come to Florida, because I've seen quite a few.
If the question is okay, can you imagine this thing that could kill you in its current state, just make it bigger? Yes, I've seen. It's
more of, have you ever seen an alligator, with its toothy smile? Just if you've ever seen an alligator up close, and I'm making the comparison to Godzilla because one of the great things this movie does that the other movies have not really been able to do is give Godzilla that creepy alligator smile of, I'm a menace and I'm evil, but I'm super chill about it. And
boy, am I having a good time.
Yeah, it's kind of, hello there, and I'm about to bite your fucking head off. Jason and I talked about this with Placid, and when they do the up close shots of the crocodiles and stuff, the close cousin to the alligator, Godzilla very much has that alligator crocodile face to it, where it's not purposely grinning, but the way the teeth sit in the jaw, the way the mouth is shaped in these creatures, it just it looks like Jack Nicholson from the fucking joke from Batman. Where do they get a load of me? And oh God. I've actually seen an alligator go Bob Gunn. I've seen this happen while I was, kayaking.
Yeah. So he shows up, and everyone's like, "Okay, boy, we gotta hide."
It says, "Where do you get a load of me?"
So Minizilla shows up and he's like,
Mhm.
I know you're here. And they're like, and they all kind of go, hey, they go to the pilot like, hey, you actually have some combat training, right? Right? You know how to fly? You got the you get the cannons on your fighter jet over there. We're just mechanics with little rifles. Like, we can't do anything to this thing. You
Right.
go in there, you shoot him with your plane. And he goes, all right. So he kind of walks over there, and then he can't bring himself to shoot. And if the mechanics had just not lost their nerve, but they start shooting, and so Godzilla gets pissed.
Yeah, what he has what amounts to a panic attack, and then he has what amounts to a panic attack, and and in his fight or flight, he flights, and the mechanics have a panic attack, and they have a fight in their fight or flight.
They start shaking. One of them just didn't understand that you don't put your finger in the trigger well until you're actually ready to fire the gun.
Right.
So they start shooting Godzilla, and Godzilla's like, really? Well, now I'm pissed. So he proceeds to step on them, squashes a few with his tail, bites several of them,
Mm-hmm.
murders everyone except 2 people. Ultimately, the pilot and one of the mechanics survive. A few days later, Japan surrenders. And this bitter mechanic gives our poor pilot the photos of all the men that died. Like, you did this. And he's bitter and angry. So our pilot goes back home to Tokyo, which this is after the Tokyo fire bombs, which are, well, that's a story in and of itself.
For more on the War in the Pacific Theater, see Andrew and I's review of The Pacific, the sequel to Band of Brothers.
So he shows up back at his parents' place in Tokyo, and everything's been burned out. And he's got a neighbor that is bitter at him because, well, she's bitter at life because her children died in the air raids. And she's like, well, if only you'd done your duty and died like a kamikaze should have, then life would be better, and you would have. And it's nothing. It's just her trying to process her grief. And his parents died, and so he's all alone. And as he's in the wreckage of his life, wouldn't you know it, in comes a woman with a baby. And she gives him the baby as she's running away from people who accuse her of stealing, and he's left with this kid. He's like, okay, so you're a baby then. How's that going for you? And eventually he leaves the
The baby's
square.
like, not well, motherfucker. Like, what the hell?
And eventually he leaves the square, and the woman was a little bit away. Like, finally, you got up and left. I've been waiting here for like an hour. And how was I supposed to know you were over here? Well, you should have known. And they bicker a little bit, but eventually she just brings the baby to where he's staying. He's kind of built a shack because it's what you do out of the rubble of your life. You build a shack. Better than being rained on. And he's got a neighbor and he's like, so, when did you have this baby? And she's like, it's not my baby. What do you mean? Well, there was this woman dying in the air raid, and she gave me her child and said, please take care of her. And well, now I am. And he goes, well, you're stupid. And she looks at him and says, well, you had her for like an hour and a half. You could have abandoned her, and you didn't either. So shut up. Well, that's fair. And the neighbor helps them raise the kid because neither of these two know what to do with babies. And she had like 3 children. And slowly, life starts to get better. He finds employment working, diffusing leftover sea mines around the Japanese coast. But it's work, and it pays pretty well because, there's some moderate danger. And he meets a few other guys. There's the doc, there's the captain, there's the kid. And he's able to build an actual house because he still owns this land. And he's just dealing with PTSD from the Godzilla attack and guilt over a lot of things. But time passes. Again, things are getting a little bit better. And she eventually decides, you know what? You don't see me as a potential wife, so maybe I need a job. So again, things are kind of progressing. It's a little bit awkward, but for a lot of returning soldiers, life is hard. Worse if your city was reduced to ash in firestorms that were of at best dubious ethical choices made by relevant people. Hey, that's a statement of fact. I'm not taking a position. But into this, as he slowly starts trying to live life again, well, wouldn't you know it, Godzilla returns. You see, Godzilla was chilling, Mark. He had a vacation spot, you know?
Yeah, sure.
It was the Bikini Atoll. And it's a nice spot, lovely time of year, and he was just chilling. And then I think it was us that that tested like the hydrogen bomb in the Bikini Atoll. The Americans nuked it. And the radiation and the blast mutated Godzilla, and now he's kind of pissed.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say, did they ever actually give a reason for why he keeps like periodically showing up?
No.
Okay.
He's just Godzilla.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't recall there being like. So, I hate to keep drawing this comparison, but in the Roland Emmerich one, it's a mom and she's coming on land to nest. In the Gareth Edwards one, the 2014 one, Godzilla is at least tangentially aware that I can't remember what they're called, the Mudas, the Mudos.
Look, we all blame the Great Muda for this. That's really what it's
understood. Yeah,
right.
so the Great Muda shows up and miss everywhere.
Yes.
And Godzilla has to deal with this, but he's joined the NWO, so Godzilla takes it. Never mind. So anyway, yeah. So he's like at least tangentially aware that the Mutos are out causing havoc, and because he's Godzilla, protector of the universe, he has to go deal with.
Because he hates these things. Like they're just his mortal enemies. So he goes out and he kills them.
Right. So here it just seems like we are, as my son would say, I exist, and Godzilla says, "So you do." Well, so do I. And no two beings may occupy the same space at any given time. And so Godzilla proceeds to then occupy their space. And then he goes away for a while, and he comes back, and I'm sitting here watching the movie going, are they going to address the reason he came back? Or it's just like, well, it seemed a good idea at the time. And it sounds like it's the latter.
It's a bit more the latter. Like you can argue this point a little bit about depending on how you feel about Godzilla in presentation. See, there's a move in certain, again, different eras of Godzilla filmmaking that try to make Godzilla more an animal.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, they don't ever.
Well, hang on.
Displacement or anything. I was saying, I know where you're going with this, and it's like there are animals that their ecosystem is displaced, and so they show. So, like, we have here in Florida, like a panther shows up or something. Like wild pigs or whatever, or turkeys. They show up in like residential areas. Yeah, because we displaced them for wherever it was their natural habitat, so they went roaming.
Actually,
we have like a wild hog issue here in Florida and a python issue where we're allowed to.
Both of those are invasive species that are not native to the area anyway.
Right, and that's my point. Like, there are certain things that happen in the wild where animals will then show up in populated areas because something happened in their habitat that they decided they needed to move or go hunt or whatever. So sometimes Godzilla gets treated that way, but not in this movie.
No. So again, sometimes they treat Godzilla more like an animal, and animals we can understand. This version of Godzilla, and again, kind of the original one, there was some reason why he was attacking Tokyo in the original. I can't remember it. But in this instance, the more monstrous you make Godzilla, I think the more important it is that he becomes a bit less understandable.
Sure, he makes for a good slasher monster.
Yeah, and look at animals, you have to be able to understand because animals behave logically.
Unless you give him cocaine.
Even the cocaine bear was logical. Look, the cocaine bear wanted more cocaine.
It's true. I mean, who doesn't?
Well, I could do without it, but you have your evenings are your own.
Sure.
So, but again, animals behave logically. Monsters behave irrationally, and Godzilla's a monster in this.
And if anyone's ever lived with a woman, an irrational human being is very scary.
Very true. So, Godzilla is.
I didn't get chastised that time. That's great.
I'll let you have that one.
Okay, I'm good. Thanks.
Look, the fact that I didn't tell you to stop. I told you to. What did I say? Take 25% off.
Every time, so that went on TikTok, and every time you feed me that line, I laugh hysterically.
Take 10% off. You take 10% off there, Mark.
Yep.
So, but now Godzilla is tracking through Japan. He is, he's gotten bigger. He is now irradiated. He's mutated. He's a little pissed off. And the Japanese government is aware of this. The world is aware of this. But Mark, in maybe the most true to form thing that if this movie says anything about the real human condition, I think what stuck with me the most was the Americans and the Soviets going, yeah, we know Godzilla's there. But if we do anything about Godzilla, the other side is going to have a problem with it. And the Americans being like, we're not sure if we can help you because if we move military assets into position, the Russians might decide to nuke us.
So two things. One, it's a very death of common sense thing, which is very real. Like I said, that phrase is not something I coined. That's the name of a book. And it's about that kind of thing, about how governmental red tape and policy
and the fact that
common sense from. Well, I don't want to go
later. The government says, you know what, citizens, it's on you, because if we do anything, then because this is a bit of like military and world history that people for some reason are not as familiar with. Like prior to World War II and even during World War II, Japan and Russia have a long history of military acrimony.
Mm-hmm.
Like they fought wars that we just don't talk about because for some reason we don't. So the Japanese government going, well, we don't want to piss off the Americans because they're kind of protecting us, and they might still technically have like oversight over Japan at this point because we're a military occupying force for them post-war for a while. We don't want to piss off the Soviets because the Soviets and the Americans are sitting there pointing giant guns at each other.
So the other thing I wanted to mention here was in terms of like the death of common sense, and everyone says, kind of like a child looking up at a parent, why don't we do something? And the great misunderstanding about FEMA and Katrina was because Jesse and I talked about this when we reviewed Treme, the first season. And you and I have touched on it here and there. And I know way back in the progressive conservatism days, we talked about Chocolate City and Ray Nagin, and the low-hanging fruit kind of idiot interpretation of what happened was Bush sat on his hands and did nothing. What people don't understand, that the nuance of government is that everything follows in steps. Nothing gets done willy-nilly. Everything is a process. Everything is a sign-off. Everything involves going through the proper channels. And there's like a Venn diagram of what agency has what oversight and what human being in that agency has that kind of oversight. It can get wonky. It can get red tapey. And in many cases, you ever talk about things being held up in Congress because, things are having a hard time passing through with all these natural dams that we've put up.
Again, somewhat in fairness to FEMA, which is an agency I don't mind mocking, but they can't do anything until you actually declare a state of emergency.
Right.
And
why when there's a hurricane, if a hurricane even like close to comes to Florida, the governor's like state of emergency because no one wants to make the mistake that Ray Nagin made, which he didn't declare a state of emergency until it was way too late. It was way after the fact.
Like, well, we've shoved a lot of people into various places. We don't know what to do with them. And meanwhile, the FEMA, like, there's somebody there advising him, was looking at him like, push that button. And then finally, when it's way too late, he pushes the button. And then FEMA's like, yay, we can do something. And so they come down and then, oh, wait, we're FEMA. We kind of suck at our jobs.
Well, yeah. So anyway,
that's also a thing. Anyway.
So it was one of those things that jumped out about me about this movie was because it was one of those where like, there's this look at like government do something and the government's going like, what exactly? And what do you think we have the power to do in this situation? And it rang very true and very unfortunate.
Yeah. So anyway, Godzilla shows up and he's coming for Tokyo he's coming for the archipelago of Japan. No one's quite sure why, but that's where he's going. And and so the government's like, well, we've got an old destroyer from the war that was heading down to Singapore. We're turning it around, but it's not going to get here in time. We need to stall the monster. So all the wooden trawler boats that have been sweeping up landmines, go out there and you do your best. And I love the captain of their boat. He's just like stupid government rules, and this place never changes. Now they've got deniability, and he's perfectly exasperated. And then they get out there, and the kid wants to like stop this. Like this is crazy. We can't actually do anything. Don't you hate the government rules? Like you were just railing against them 20 minutes ago. And the guy goes, "True, I really do hate them. But we're here, and I'm not going to do nothing." And they stall Godzilla. One of the better scenes of the movie, actually. They get him to chase them. They try to detonate landmines on him. Again, these sea mines. And it's not really working, and he's kind of slowly catching up to them.
They get a good shot in on him, but it has like a mutant healing factor.
Yeah, they get one into his mouth and blow it up, and it bothers him for a minute. But now they're out of everything, and they were a bit too close when they detonated. And if you've never seen a sea mine detonate, they are impressive explosions. And now they're a little bit screwed, but the cavalry arrives in the form of this destroyer, and Godzilla's like, okay, we're not doing this. So he almost sinks it, dives underwater, and then nukes it from below. Our heroes are then airlifted. They wind up back. They're alive. And they're like, boy, this sucks. We need to evacuate Tokyo. And we've seen this thing. It's terrible. And they were like, well, the government won't do it. Why not? Well, there's a lot of people in Tokyo. And if we cause a panic, that's a bad thing. And our anti-government captain, once again, is nailed on the head. Like, no, they just stupid bureaucrats. So they go back, and our protagonist is guilty all over again, and he... I was surprised he didn't try to get them out. Like, I get him not wanting to actually sound the panic alarm because, you don't need a bunch of people in a panic, but he could have gotten Akiko and Noki. Yeah, it starts with an N.
So Godzilla shows up and nukes Tokyo.
Noriko, that's her name. So Godzilla does show back up because, of course, he does, and he attacks this area of sort of the Tokyo metropolitan area. It's called Jinzo.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where Noriko has been working. And Godzilla shows up, and he destroys buildings, and he causes problems, and he bites a train in half, and it's great. And then protagonist shows up to try and save Noriko, and Godzilla, at a certain point, they start shooting him with tanks. And he goes, you know what? I was just going to take a stroll.
Yeah.
Look, you got all this stuff in here. I was just going to you needed some resurfacing. But okay. So they shoot him with tanks, and he then nukes the place. The spines light up, and atomic breath, boom. And we think Noriko dies in this. She manages to save the protagonist, but it's very sad, and he's very traumatized all over again. Like, I thought life was going well. We were becoming a family. My mental health was improving. I thought I could maybe forgive myself for my failings. And now, no. It's all gone to hell. Like it will. And eventually a bunch of citizens get together and they're like, okay, so the government won't do anything. We don't have a whole lot of military. We're still rebuilding after the war. And the United States and the Soviet Union, the last two remaining superpowers in the world, are both too busy staring at each other to actually do anything here, and will take any act by the other in this area as a sign of aggression.
That's what the point I was going to make before, besides the FEMA thing, was it also reminded me of the third act of the Suicide Squad, where it was like, well, we'll just let the giant starfish do its thing, because then it'll solve one of our problems for us.
A little bit. So we get a bunch of of war veterans and just people from around. They're like, okay, we've got an idea. Okay, what's the idea? So we're going to take a couple of big ships, they're former destroyers. We're going to tie Godzilla up in cable, and we're going to sink him to the bottom of the ocean in one of the deepest parts we can find using essentially Freon displacement. We're going to tie him up in cables. We're going to then change the density of the water so he sinks, and the pressure will theoretically kill him. All right, but what if that doesn't work? Well, then we got a bunch of balloons down there, and we will rapidly then resurface him, and decompression can be more dangerous than pressure. So between the two things, we'll probably get him. And really, this is our only idea. We don't have another idea. If this doesn't work, he's marching into Tokyo and sitting on it, and we don't know what to do. So, all right, we don't have a better plan. We don't have a better plan. We got to cross the streams.
Bill,
I'm excited about this plan.
You beat me to it. And Bill Murray walks in. He goes, "I'm excited about this plan. Let's do it."
I like this plan. I'm excited about this plan.
Yep.
So this is the plan.
Somebody says, "Tell Godzilla about the Twinkie." What about the Twinkie?
If they had a big enough Twinkie, Godzilla would just eat it and be happy. But
It's true.
In the midst of this, our protagonist gets a plane, and he's like, "Okay, the only way to hurt this thing is from the inside." Because when we detonated that mine in its mouth, it actually did some damage. Did more damage than anything we've done to it externally. So if I can fly this plane full of explosives and bombs and jet fuel into its mouth, that might provide our window of opportunity. And I'm a kamikaze pilot after all, so this tracks. And he goes and finds the last surviving mechanic from that group, so we get some emotional closure there. They fix up a plane, they load it up, and then Godzilla arrives and starts wandering through the countryside. So he goes in his plane and he harasses Godzilla until Godzilla goes, "You know what? Fine." And you know what? Anyone who's been bothered by like one specific flying insect will empathize with Godzilla here. Like, no. We're doing this. So he lures Godzilla out to sea, where the plan works. They tangle him up. They sink it. He goes to nuke He nukes an unmanned ship. And the theory is, well, there's a recharge timer on the atomic breath. While it's recharging, that's our moment to strike. So they tie him up. They sink him, and he doesn't like it. But he's not dead. He's hurt, but he's not dead. So they go, "Oh crap! Well, fine, resurface him." And he gets part of the way up, and then detaches himself from all the floaties. And now, oh boy, we're in trouble. But now the other cavalry arrives. Everyone who wasn't part of this deal originally has now. We got a bunch of tugboats.
Yep, they are led by Randy Quaid
in his red biplane.
Yes, he says, "Hello, boys, I'm back." Mushy, mushy.
And they tie half of the tugboats to one of the ships, half of the tugboats to the other, and they all pull to lift Godzilla up out of the water, which works. And Godzilla comes out of the water, and he's pissed. He's just been sunk to 1,500 meters, which is
a lot.
He went down. He's been through it, man. He
actually has some cracks in his face. He's not thrilled.
He got horribly crushed very quickly by tons of pressure, and then decompressed. So there's all these nitrogen bubbles in his bloodstream, and it was cold down there, and now he's starting to ice up, and he's not having a good time. There's like, you know what? Fine. You asked for it. He goes to nuke them, and our protagonist flies his kamikaze plane into Godzilla's mouth. He ejects at the last second. It lands, thunk, and then blows up. And it tears Godzilla's face off, and it's enough to undo him. And he slowly collapses into a pile of rubble, because that's what the budget would allow for. But our hero thought he was going to die, and it turns out no. He was encouraged to live for both his adopted daughter and by the last mechanic who helped to give him emotional closure. And he survives, and Godzilla's defeated. And then they all go back to a hero's welcome, but his adopted daughter, who's 2 at this point, 18 months, 2 years, shows up with the aunt that he left them with, and she's like, "Hey, you got a telegram while you were out trying to be a hero. Turns out your soon-to-be wife survived the attack." So they rush to the hospital where she's being held, and he breaks down, and she's like, "Is your war finally over?" And he's like, "Yes, I can finally go home." And it's tearful and it's emotional and it's really great. And then because it's a Godzilla movie, we cut to near the bottom of the ocean where floating down in the depths is one of the pieces of Godzilla's head, which starts to regenerate.
I'm going to talk about the atomic breath stuff because this is a very well done movie, very well acted movie, a lot of emotional beats. It's, I don't know if it's going to get nominated for Best Picture of the Year. I'm not entirely sure how foreign film works when it comes to the Academy Awards, but I'm hoping, especially for what I'm about to talk about, this is a contender right up there with Evil Dead Rise for Best Sound Design of the Year. The very first time in 1977, you're sitting and watching Star Wars and you see the Death Star blow up Alderaan. Even back then, and granted, maybe I'm misremembering because I've also seen the special editions. I've seen these movies on the big screen, big theaters, Dolby speakers and all that. But the sound of the Death Star powering up to blow up Alderaan is one of the coolest, one of the loudest, one of the most breathtaking laser sounds I've ever seen in movies. Then comes along Independence Day. And that sequence of them blowing up New York, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. The glowing of the...
these days, there would be a giant portion of the population with signs going, "Thank you, we welcome our alien overlords."
People are idiots.
I'm not wrong, though.
You are not wrong. No, that my saying people are idiots is me agreeing with you. The bright blue light, the sound of the explosion. I mean, like Roland Emmerich knows how to blow stuff up. So you have A New Hope, Star Wars, you have Independence Day, and then you have this movie. Like, it is top 3 in terms of like that powering up and release of a concentrated laser beam. And I don't give a shit that it's atomic breath. I don't care.
Call it whatever you want. It's okay.
Yeah, it's a laser beam. And every time Godzilla blew something up with it, it rivaled Alderaan and Independence Day. It's phenomenal. For me, it's the best part about this movie because not only is the sound design one of the best I've heard, and like I said, on par with what I got out of Evil Dead Rise, though in a very different way. Just the clicking of his spinal parts, like you've watched a million movies, you've seen people cock guns before, like that's the kind of sound that it was making. And I'll tell you, like I said, this isn't me being a weenie. Sometimes I say scary, it's not like, oh my god, like I had to cover my eyes or anything like that.
No, it's
it's a very disturbing sound.
I've relayed this in the past, but watching the 2014 Gareth Edwards Godzilla movie in theaters, and the first time in the midst of fighting the Mutos, when you see his spine start to light up, I got goosebumps because I knew it was going to happen. Like, you see it almost looks like it's a well done shot in that movie. It almost looks like they're stars in this like dust swirl, and then you see them start going up his back, and you realize, oh no, he's about to nuke something, and he then proceeds to atomic breath all over the alien bugs, and it's great. But in that movie, you're also cheering for Godzilla. So when that starts, like that is your, that's Shawn Michaels tuning up the band, right?
Yeah.
Here, I got goosebumps again, but in a very different kind of way. When those spines, the first time it happens, start up, click, 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 and it's slowly getting faster. And again, we're all Godzilla fans. We know what's going to happen. And because Godzilla's a monster in this case, it's going to be bad. It elicits a very visceral reaction. And then, of course, he blows up a city.
Yeah. In terms of just like physical movie craft, so not counting performances, screenwriting, anything like that, like production design, that kind of thing, it is the best thing in this movie. It is so well done. I mean, it is done with such care, such effort, such love of this IP, this creature. And it sounds so good. Like, I took my kids to go see it, and we all reacted viscerally to the first time he does it. It's really good. and it's the thing that lasted with me the most throughout the entire picture. Aside from that, it's a great story. This force of nature that we don't understand, we don't know what it's doing, we don't know why it's attacking us, but it won't stop, is coming at us, and it's classic tale of if we don't do something, we're dead. Like, there's nothing else to do here. There's no. It reminded me of the Terminator. It's funny because afterwards Jonas was like, "Dad, make me watch all the good movies," and I went, oh, "Okay." All right. Next up, Terminator 2. But it was
just start with the first one.
There's boobs in it, and he's 9.
Okay, hang on. There's a second of boobs. If you watch it with him, you can pretty easily fast forward or skip over the love scene. It's short.
I am an American parent, and I only want him to see violence.
Look, man, I'm not even disagreeing with you in premise. I was raised more on violence than sex.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying that one scene is it's easy to skip over.
Fair. Anyway, it very much reminded me
not
of
like Showgirls, where half the time,
So that'll be second on the list. It's Terminator, Showgirls, Alien.
That's not how that goes.
It's a Versace. Anyway,
I hate that movie so much.
Oh god, I can't wait to talk about that with somebody. That and Hustlers.
Dude, we both know you and Sean are going to talk about that. That's a you and Sean movie.
I told Bailey I was going to make him do it. Come on. Come on, faggot. Let's go. We're going to talk about Showgirls. Anyway, so we were talking about Godzilla, and yeah, it's a great story about. I was talking about the Kyle Reese thing, and like, you can't reason with this thing. There's no talking to it. It's here to kill you. That's what it's going to do, and it won't stop until it's done. That's the way Godzilla is presented in this thing. Yeah. It's that it's just going to keep coming. There's no talking to it. And again, it's Godzilla as a natural disaster, metaphor for natural disaster. But it's coming in like rapid succession. It's like, why are all these earthquakes happening? Why are all these the years that where global climate change affected the local weather enough that we were getting like rapid hurricanes in succession, and everyone just going, why? That kind of a thing. At least that's what I took from it. So, and I like that element of it. I mentioned before, it's a very science fiction-y movie. It was, we have a problem. This is what this thing is. This is what the resources that we have. Here's how we're gonna jury rig. We're gonna MacGyver something in order to defeat this thing. And if we don't, we're all dead. Like, it's either this or nothing. And I like that. I like that tension, that dramatic tension of it. The human stuff is fine. It's it's nice. I have no major complaints about it. I don't know how much it affected me personally. I'm glad it's there. It needs to be there. I just don't know how much of it necessarily grabbed me, but that's a personal thing. In terms of pure objective movie craft, it's a very well done, nicely told, dramatic personal story about this guy overcoming his trauma and grief from the war, and finding, and I do like a story about a found family. Family is not necessarily who you're blood related to. It's the people in your life that bring you joy and comfort, and that you provide joy and comfort for. Not necessarily who you're blood bonded to. So it's nice. That was good. It clocks in at roughly a little over 2 hours long. And I don't know. It probably could have used some shaving. But
there's probably a few places you could trim, yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, that's me reaching for something to criticize. Other than that, it's one of the best movies of this year. It's right up there with Barbie, Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer. I think it's like I said, I don't know if foreign film gets to be a Best Picture nominee, but it should be.
They can. I think Parasite was, so I'm pretty sure they can.
So, I mean, if there's any justice in the world, this will be, because this is not a whole lot. There's not a whole lot to necessarily deconstruct and criticize about this movie. It's all pretty much competent, well-made feature filmmaking, Robert.
Yeah, and look, Godzilla always works best as a metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
And here he's a metaphor for, again, post-traumatic stress disorder, the carrying over of resentment and hatred after a war. Again, the displaced soldier, which is, and one of the great things about this movie. Okay, I don't want to get too much into the weeds on the following, but because we live in the world we live in, some famous like pop culture critics, guys on YouTube and whatnot, came out of this movie, and a sort of prevailing sentiment that came out afterwards was, look, when you make a good movie, people will see it and people will like it instead of pushing your message. Now, because this comes from people that are on one side of the culture war, the other side of the culture war then immediately decides to do the, really, you're going to call Godzilla apolitical? And we all have to and those of us who look at everyone on both sides of this issue like you're all idiots, not understanding how you're being played, have to then do the following. Godzilla has a point of view. Godzilla has, to the extent that it has a message, it does have, again, it has a point of view. You can view Godzilla as a couple of different metaphors. But when you have if you want the best vehicle to deliver messaging, it's a good movie and a good story. Part of the problem with so much pop culture crap these days, and I don't care what side of the aisle you're on for this, mind you, people have their message and decide that because we think the message is good, people will then like the movie, television show, comic book, whatever.
It's the Pandaverse.
Yeah.
We said a thing we think you'll agree with, and therefore you'll like the movie, and it doesn't translate that way. You don't bring people to enjoy something because you said a thing they like. Your comment about people don't want discourse and shared opinions. They want to hear their opinion coming out of your mouth so they feel validated. We talked about this when we tried to review Indiana Jones, and I had an existential crisis.
Okay.
But that goes the other way too, where people are now writing movies and echoing the sentiment of the bubble they currently exist in and hoping that will make the movie succeed, and it fails every single time.
Let me give you two examples of this. One you won't understand, one I think you will. So, if you're not familiar with the sad fall of Doctor Who, okay, if you're not, the fact that the most recent episode as of our broadcast was so bad that even professional reviewers for like the BBC are reviewing this going, boy, this is really flimsy, bad storytelling that's just a vehicle for delivering quote unquote the message. Should tell you a lot about how far we've fallen here. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work. I mean, dude, how many movies have we talked about? Like Strange World was nothing but a delivery system for the message.
Yeah. Look, I defended She-Hulk. I was on there with Alexis and Andrew, and I believe my sort of overall take on it was, I understand the point you're trying to get across with She-Hulk, and I think it's a valid point to make. You did it in the most ham-handed, shrill way possible. So even this is what I say about my dad all the time. I've said it on this show. I've say it a million times. What you're saying may be right, but you're saying it in such a bad way, no one's listening. She-Hulk.
Well, it also doesn't help that like one of the big promotional pieces from She-Hulk was your lead actress mansplaining to the Hulk about trauma and anger. When he's lost everything and manages his anger, and you're like, well, I'm just a woman and this trumps everything.
I know you haven't seen it. Maybe you've seen the clips of it, and I don't want to debate it, but What's her nuts from the Traveling Pants movies doing the monologue about the duality of womanhood and how they can't win no matter what they do, was the right way to do that. If that is what you in fact want to do. The wrong way to do that was how they did it in She-Hulk. And I want to compare those two because it's two examples of the same thing, one done poorly and one done appropriately.
Yeah. And my point in all this is a lot of people have been, again, you come out and you say, the message, quote unquote, if we can insert the drinker message,
the message.
Message divides. A good movie will bring people together. That doesn't mean your movie is devoid of messaging. That doesn't mean your movie is devoid of point of view or interpretation. It means write a good story, make a good movie, and that will go so much further towards like forwarding your message than any amount of you standing on a street corner with a megaphone. And Godzilla Minus One, again, it has a point of view. It has a lot to say about what we do and what we carry, like post-conflict, post-war. Like, and the fact that you can get a bunch of different interpretations out of it actually speaks to how well it's done. Like, because I'm American, like, Mark, we just recently, had essentially, 20 some odd years of armed conflict between Iraq and Pakistan, and Afghanistan, like our presence in these countries. That only ended very recently, right?
I was going to say, the attack on the World Trade Center takes place in September of 2001.
Famously September 11th.
Uh-huh. And we were in Afghanistan by November. So November of 2001 till now.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people, especially, soldiers who were part of that, who struggled still and will. And there's a lot of that in this movie. Again, like, do I think that the Japanese filmmakers were thinking about what the American perspective on this would be? Probably not. But I mean, it's there to be interpreted because how do you process being part of war, especially war that might start thinking of as pointless? And the whole history of Japan in World War II is a can of worms. But
so that's something that Andrew and I talked about in the Pacific, but we've talked about it in any time that Andrew and I get together and talk war stuff. Any of our Veterans Day shows, is the object of the military is to kill the enemy, hold positions, take over countries, etc. I mean, it does other stuff too, but that's generally the idea. And they train people to do this. They train people to do this well. Our professional military is some of the best killers in the world. And then we send them home. And many of them are not sent home with the skills and coping mechanisms to handle the humdrum of daily life. And that's one of the things that this movie does, in fact, deal with in its own way, is how do you, it was one of the things I loved about the metaphor inherent in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. The narration at the end of Return of the King about, the Hobbit returning to Hobbiton, like, how do you go back to that life? Yeah. I just as a brief aside, one of the reasons why I love the Lord of the Rings trilogy is you have these very simple farmers that are called. They have a greater calling. See if you can follow the parallels here. If they don't deal with the situation, everyone dies. They don't really have a choice. If they either do the good deed, they answer the call, or they're dead. And so no one wants to go. No one wants to march into hell, but they do it because what other choice do they have? And they're good people, and they want to save those they love. So they go and they do. And it's a harrowing journey that almost kills them. And in one case, someone, succumbs to vice. Someone absolutely, their mind fractures and they completely crumble, and they are the worst version of themselves. They are an absolute monster, and it almost kills them. Just short of being, of going over the edge into the brink. They are brought back, and they heal, they recover, and then they have to go back to that life. They have to go back to the simple farmer life, and it's almost impossible. And one of them makes a decision that he can't do it. He has to go somewhere else. He can't go back. That's the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Now, I just like everyone's like, wait, there was no eagles. Like, what happened to the eagles? Like, where, like, hobbits, dragon, nothing. Like, no, that is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's a story about simple people doing God's work, going to war to save save their world, and then going home and they can't. One does, and one can't fucking get his head together.
It is, and it is to Tolkien's eternal credit that in that era, because the Lord of the Rings, I'm not going to say it's just a metaphor for World War I. That's deeply simplest. It's dismissive and simplistic.
Yeah.
But it is informed by Tolkien's experience in World War I. That's not a secret. But so again, we're talking, 1920s, 1930s. And at that time period, Tolkien unflinchingly looks at the reality of not being able to come home again.
Yeah.
And when a lot of people don't. Right. And look, Tolkien's, I don't know if you want to call it a vice or not, but because he's a good Catholic, he gives his people who can't fit back in an out that is not self-annihilation, which is the route too many people take.
And so Godzilla, to the extent that it does, examines that. Godzilla Minus One takes a little bit of time and examines what do you do when you've been trained to do this one thing. You do it, you do the good work, and then you're expected to just go home and resume normal life. And the pants don't fit, and the jacket's too tight, and the air doesn't feel right to you.
And let's further compound it with the city's destroyed, your parents are dead.
Right.
And you were supposed to die. You were explicitly, what you signed up for was explicitly death. Like, I'm going to be a kamikaze pilot. I know what this means. Like, there's no, there's no ambiguity here. Like, whether you were, it doesn't get into whether or not he was forced into that or whether he volunteered. My hunch is more the latter, because most of them were, but, it's not really the point. The point is, like, I was supposed to die. I saw good men die and I didn't. How do I deal with this? And
another parallel, Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
I mean, it's silly, but I think if you get past the silliness of Forrest Gump, I can't remember the actor's name, but the guy playing Lieutenant Dan, he was talking about, like, Gary Sinise, yeah. I was supposed to die. Every one of my relatives has died in every previous war, and I was supposed to die, and you saved me. You did me an utter disservice. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with myself. I wasn't prepared for this. Like, can you imagine? And Andrew and I have talked about this.
I was prepared to die out there. I wasn't prepared to live back here.
Right. I was in no way prepared to do the work of adjusting to normal life again. And I think about, like, the guys, in the boat gearing up for D-Day, storming the beach of Normandy. And, if you're standing at the front of that boat, you're like, what the fuck am I getting out of this? Like, I am about to be sacrificed to the gods.
Depending on which beach you were landing at specifically.
Yeah.
There were a few that went off without a hitch, believe it or not.
But I mean, like, the boat opens, the ramp comes down, and you take that first step on the sand, and you're not one of the guys that's gunned down immediately. Imagine you survived all that. Imagine you survived the war. Imagine you get to go home, and you were in, you went into that engagement going, I'm standing in front. There's no way I don't catch a bullet here. And the guy to your left, the guy to your right, and the guy standing behind you all gunned down. And you keep going, and you keep going, and everyone's else getting gunned down around you, and you somehow manage to miss every single bullet. And then eventually the war ends, and you go home, and you're still, like, in that mentality of, I wasn't supposed to come home. I was supposed to die on that beach. And here I am. And something I've been thinking about lately, it's like a lot lately, is social contracting and consequential behavior, consequential thinking.
I mean, in this movie, like, we get some of those circumstances where he does the bit where, no, I died there, didn't I? I died on that beach.
Right.
This is my dream as I'm dying. Is I came home and there's a beautiful woman and there's a daughter, and maybe it's not perfect, but I survived when I shouldn't have. and how do I can't deal with it. I'm clearly dead.
If you think about like beyond religious morality, and all of that, what keeps society going is that social contracting of, if I do the good things, then the bad things don't happen to me, in theory. And if I have things in my life that are worth preserving, that are worth working for, that are worth protecting, then I'll continue to do the good things to at least protect that. When you take away when you make it so that someone has nothing to lose, and there's no reason to social contract, there's nothing kind of holding back the bad thoughts that we all have. This is why people do the shit that they do. When you push somebody into the position of having nothing to live for, they will do something heinous because we're all capable of that. What stops us is our upbringing, our moral compass. But when that fails, consequential thinking. If I do this, if I act on the bad thoughts, bad things will happen to the things that mean most to me. But when you take those away from people, that's how you create psychos.
I mean, we joked about this in one of our group chats earlier, but damn you, Hollywood! One bad movie away from turning into Falling Down. Like,
that's on the list I want to show Jonas.
That tracks. That's up there.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Well,
all right.
Especially, it's interesting. When you're younger, you identify with you actually do kind of think Michael Douglas is a hero.
Mm-hmm.
When you get to your 20s, you realize. When you get to your 20s, you start to root for Robert Duvall. When you get to your 30s, you identify with Michael Douglas and really hope that somehow you turn into Robert Duvall.
Anything else about this movie?
Just again, the acting is all good. I appreciate all the thought and craft that went into it. One of the few movies recently that's actually, when I say hooked me emotionally, I don't mean that I like broke down into tears at any point, but there's stuff in this movie that it's not really over the top, but it does kind of poke at your heartstrings a little bit. Like when they leave behind the youngest member of their crew because they think they're all going to die.
Yeah.
Like, no, you stay here. We're leaving you the future because this is probably going to go sideways.
Right.
Or, just stuff like that. That is, it's not bombastic, but is very human and is very, very resonant. I appreciate that they let Godzilla just be a monster. This is one of the few movies that, again, speaking to emotionally hooking, like there's dread in these scenes.
Yeah.
Like that scene when he's chasing them on the boat is exceptionally well crafted.
And I gotta say, all the credit in the world to that face, because it comes across as like gleefully menacing on a creature that is not necessarily emotional. Like I said, it's got that alligator or crocodile grin to it, where it's just the shape of your face.
It's just enough physiology to trigger your desire to anthropomorphize what's going on.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's good. And then you mentioned, I loved his first attack on the city.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so well done. You've got the classic Godzilla soundtrack going for the first time.
Well, I was thinking about like the when he takes out Tokyo and the atomic wind.
Yeah, because it goes out and then it comes back, because that's what happens when you nuke something.
Right, and then you see the chick get like blown back into nothingness. So like you assume she's dead. Like that's harrowing to look at. That, by the way, is what I wanted from Oppenheimer. Beat that drum.
So really what you wanted was to watch them nuke the Japanese.
Yes.
Because you're weird. But I love that sequence. This is a well-made movie. It's apparently leaving theaters very soon, so if you get a chance, go see this on the big screen.
Yeah, go see it. If you can get an IMAX showing or Dolby to where things are amplified, do so. It's worth it.
Yeah, I would encourage. Again, this is leaving, I think, later this week.
Mhm.
So it's only in American theaters for a short period of time. That's the current plan. Hopefully that it gets extended. Go see it. This is a really good movie. There's bits in, again, if I wanted to nitpick, and because I'm me, I can. There's a few places where the CGI is a little spotty. There's a few places of compositing issue. This is just budget. This is budgetary more than anything else. The choice to make Godzilla as immobile in the upper body when he's on land as he was, it's an interesting callback to how the original suit had to be moved.
Mhm.
Not sure I would have done it personally. And that's
I don't know.
again, hang on. It's just an artistic choice.
If your vision is we want this to be like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, sure.
So again, like it's the smallest of nitpicks. Like that's not
Mhm.
how I would have done it. That doesn't mean it's wrong.
I tell you, Robert, it's a slippery slope, because if it's too much, if you give it too much fluidity, if you give it too much mobility, it becomes Zilla. And so it's like, where do you draw that line to keep it in the Godzilla box?
There's just bits of like how the upper, like the shoulders and arms in particular, move that I really think the Monster Verse version of Godzilla has nailed.
Yeah.
That I think they might have been able to employ here, because he does a lot of like this when he's walking, and it's just right there the whole time. So again, minor nitpick. Again, great movie.
It might have
Very
been
few complaints.
It might have been that active choice though, because I might be closer to what they were thinking about than I think I am. With we want this to be an upright walking crocodile, as opposed to
again, you might if you watch, like, especially the original Godzilla,
as opposed to a gecko cross with a kangaroo, the way it is in the MonsterVerse.
That's a bit much. But again, just real. That's some very small stuff, but for the most part, big thumbs up. Can't recommend this movie enough. It's nice to talk about a good movie, because we get to do it so rarely.
Yeah, no, this worked out really well. All right. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, here comes the money.
We're in the money. We're in the money.
Alrighty. Okay, this should have. There we go. It's always like a delay. On a budget of $15 million, it's already made $35 million. Godzilla.
Now, hang on. Two things about this that need to be appropriately understood if we're going to talk about the budget of this movie.
Yes.
One, this is converting the dollar to the yen. So $15 million. I forget exactly what it converts to in yen, but it goes a little further. Two, if you look at this and go, wait a minute, 15 million is nothing, understand that the most expensive Japanese movie ever made is only something like 49 million.
It does speak to the gross excess of American filmmaking, doesn't it?
Hang on. I'm making a point. So one, if we were to do like, okay, what's the most expensive American movie produced? It's 300 million something. So if we take about a third of that, we take a third of the most expensive, we're still 150 million-ish. That's about what this movie would have cost if it was made here. This would have been $150 million budget, give or take. So that's not wholly out of line. It's just it's how does the dollar convert to a different currency? Second, every horrifying story you've heard about being overworked by like VFX animators and whatnot here in Hollywood, everyone in Japan hears those stories and thinks, boy, that sounds nice. Horribly overworked.
Godzilla Minus One debuted at number 1 at the Japanese box office, grossing 1.4 billion yen, $7.8 million, from almost 700,000 ticket sales during its first 3 days. During its opening weekend, the film grossed US $1.2 million from 49 IMAX theaters, making it the largest opening for a live-action Japanese film in the format. The film remained at number 1 for 3 consecutive weekends before being overtaken by Tonde Sataima, Biwakio, Yori Ayo Komeiti Komayashiro in its fourth weekend.
I appreciate the fact that you start in good faith and then just devolve into Star Trek.
The film has grossed 3.8 billion yen from 2.48 million ticket sales as of December 3rd. As of November 26, 2023, the film had grossed US 23.1 million in Japan. In the US and Canada, the film was released alongside a Renaissance, a film by Beyonce, Silent Night, and The Shift. Which, by the way, I know you were kind of maybe sort of hinting at maybe doing Silent Night. Yeah, wait till you see where that debuted this weekend. I'm glad we didn't.
Hang on. I don't care where it debuts. I care if I think I'm going to enjoy it.
Fair. There are times where I'll talk about something because I want to talk about it and I'm passionate about it and I don't care if other people saw it or not. And then there are times I want to talk about something because people are talking about it and I want to be in on the conversation. This was neither. And was projected to gross 11 to 12 million from 2,308 theaters in its opening weekend. The film made 4.7 million on its first day, including 2.1 million from its Wednesday and Thursday previews. It went on to debut 11 million, finishing in third and breaking the U.S. open weekend record for a live-action Japanese film. As of December 3rd, Godzilla Minus One has grossed 11 million in the U.S. and Canada and 23.1 million in Japan, with the overall gross being roughly 35 million against its $15 million budget. All right, so that's that. The weekend that was Renaissance, a film by Beyonce. To all the girls I've loved before, we are not going to review the Beyonce fucking concert film. Stop asking. Moving on. The Hunger Games dropped from 1 to 2, and Godzilla debuted at number 3. Trolls Band Together maintained its position at number 4 in its third week.
Okay. Mark.
So hang on. Say what you're gonna say, and then I gotta do my thing.
I was gonna say hit the button. Just hit the button first.
I got an extra long sound for not just the movie itself, but for Disney as a whole.
Yeah, soft open, 60% drop. Disney, Alexis was joking for a while about burning something down and collecting the insurance money. Boy, is that getting closer and closer to reality.
I mean, look, here, let me be the ray of sunshine in this particular case.
Okay,
Disney,
I want to hear you try.
Disney knows we are in like 30s level depression here where this company is concerned. This is executives jumping out windows time. They're aware of that. They are well aware of that.
You'd like to think, but meanwhile, you've got Bob Iger appointing more people to the board because he's desperately trying to fend off a hostile takeover.
Well, look, there's some things you do to maintain your business, but there's we're talking about the creative stuff here. I don't want to get into the weeds on the business stuff.
I have no faith in the creative side of Disney at this point doing anything other than going, yay, the message was successfully delivered. And they don't care how much money they burned.
No, I don't think that's true. I think they are well aware that I think Disney was the last holdout for, Hollywood woke. And now everyone realizes that it's bad. But this is the thing that I talk about in our group chat all the time. Lag time. They know now in the year of our Lord 2023, this has been an abysmal failure. They've delayed as much as they can into 2025 so they have some time to retool. So maybe in 2025, we'll start to see the fruits of the correction. We probably won't see a full-on rejection for just to use the parlance for easy conversation, woke Disney until probably 2026. But they are well aware of that now, and they are in the process of at least correcting the creative. And that being, you cannot continue to pander to the minority groups.
Fire everyone.
Mm-hmm.
That's what should happen.
Did you see on Midnight's Edge, like Kevin Feige maybe like jumping ship?
Hang on. Well, let's be very clear about something here.
Mm-hmm.
Because we speak the truth, do we not?
We do.
If the public line is Kevin Feige is considering relocating, behind the scenes, Bob Iger told him, screw you, you're fired.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's how you spin it in public. Like,
Mhm.
we're not going to fire you publicly
Right.
because that's not how we do things. But I mean, the scuttlebutt now has become Kevin Feige has until his current contract is up to fix the problem he caused at Marvel. And if he can't, his contract will not be renewed.
So
Or he will be allowed to walk away.
I have a hot take on Lucasfilm. Because the Midnight's Edge critical drinker take is with Dave Filoni in charge, it's more of the same. It's Kathleen Kennedy.
Probably more of the same.
It's Kathleen Kennedy continuing to do The Force is Female, but putting Dave Filoni up front as the sacrificial lamb. And here's what I'm going to tell you. They're not letting Lucasfilm operate independently. They've lost too much money on this $4 billion investment. So here's the thing. I think Lucasfilm will try, but I think what's going to end up coming out over the next couple of years is they can't get anything done. Because every time Kennedy / Filoni try to continue to push The Force is Female, somebody at Disney higher up is going, no, have you people not been paying attention? And you're not going to see you're not going to see a viable product that is meant to make money. So I'm talking theatrical exhibition come out until like 2027.
Hang on. Here's why I'm going to say it's business as usual for at least another 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
Some of this has to do with just releases.
Mm-hmm.
Disney Star Wars has 5 things coming out in 2024.
But it's all Disney Plus stuff.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, but that's kind of the point that I'm making is that I don't think anyone from Disney cares. They already know that Disney Plus is a money pit. And it's not the baby they're trying to protect. The baby they're trying to protect is theatrical exhibition, and I don't think anything's coming out of that studio.
Oh, well,
2027. That's going to get Disney proper stamp of approval on it.
Well, hang on, that wasn't happening anyway. So part of why I bring this up is some of what's being posited here is an unfalsifiable premise. You're saying Disney's going to force Lucasfilm to play ball. So we won't see anything until 2027. I'm saying if you look at their schedule, they didn't have anything until 2027 anyway.
Okay.
But like next year, they've got what? Ahsoka season 2, Bad Batch, Skeleton Crew, Acolyte, one other I want to say. I can't remember. You got 5 things coming out. They're all television series.
Mm-hmm.
They're all gonna bomb.
Yeah.
Even for Disney, like bombing on streaming is both better and worse.
So there's cover. If you think about the way executives think about things, and again, they pay attention to this stuff. Someone pays attention and they get reports. And that is nothing on streaming is doing well. Get the occasional thing that pops up here or there that kind of captures, the attention of most of the world. But they're few and far between. Most stuff, because it's a long tail and everything's become niche, and because they see the same thing we've talked about, and that is half of their potential audience. 1/3 of their potential audience hasn't figured out internet yet and is still watching terrestrial television. So they never had them to begin with. 1/3 is watching YouTube and TikTok, and they weren't going to get them anyway. And then the last third is the people who have figured out streaming, and they are fighting over breadcrumbs in that group. And that group is fractured beyond all recognition.
I don't think you're wrong there. And again, part of the problem is you're going to get a couple of those that are going to come out. And I've also, on a purely artistic side, since we're talking Lucasfilm, any faith that anyone had in Dave Filoni's creative vision should have died with Ahsoka.
Yeah, we got to move this on. But that all came about because Wish, is a certifiable bomb at this point.
And the last thing we need is more Star Wars via Refn, and that seems to be what Filoni's got for us.
So we're going to talk about Napoleon on the next Damn You Hollywood. That's next week, because of the way my schedule worked out. But apparently this is not going well for Ridley Scott. That fell from 2 to 6 at a 64% drop and is not doing well critically.
So let me tell you part of the problem with Napoleon. And as soon as I heard this, what they were doing, I knew this would be a problem. because I didn't know the scope they were trying with Napoleon.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes out, no, this is his whole life. I'm sorry, guys. You can't fit that man's life into 3 hours.
Yeah.
He's too important. He did too many important things. And look, man, we've talked about this before. Like, I'm actually more favorable towards Prometheus than a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But my last hope at Ridley Scott not being just a past it hack, not willing to accept that he's washed up, was Alien Covenant.
Yeah.
I don't think he's made a really good movie in a long time. Maybe you could argue Blade Runner 2049.
No,
Whatever it was.
You don't get to backtrack on that one. You love that movie. You were the one trying to convince me that it was better than I thought it was. So you don't get to say now that it's that's
well, no, hang on. I'm not backtracking the sense that I think it sucks now.
Mm-hmm.
It's more me looking back at it going, I don't like. There's good stuff here. There's some very interesting stuff in that movie.
Sure,
but there's also a lot of problems, and
I kept putting me to sleep.
Can I tell you, I couldn't watch it a second time. Like I not in one sitting. I couldn't get through it in one sitting a second time. So this is not me backtracking to say that suddenly that movie sucks. I don't think it sucks, but like Ridley Scott seemed to lose his touch somewhere along the line. I'm not sure exactly where, but yeah, the fact that he's got another Alien movie coming out, and he's got like 3 movies coming out. Like there's Napoleon and then 2 more, I think, next year. I don't have hope for any of them at this point. Like that guy has lost.
Yeah, I'm not excited for Alien Romulus, and I know like that's the thing right now is to be excited for a new Alien movie. Like, oh, Alien returns to the big screen. Ridley Scott coming back to Alien, and I'm like, who cares? Like, we tried that. It didn't work. Yeah, this is a franchise that I feel like the answers were very obvious, and no one bothers to look at them. And then they, and it's like they keep doing weird shit with the aliens. It's like, this isn't that complicated. Why are you doing this? The same thing with the Predator series, which we're getting a sequel to Prey, by the way. Have you heard that? Yep, that was my thought. I hate everyone and everything. Anyway, Animal debuted at number 7, The Shift debuted at number 8, and Silent Night debuted at number 9, and this is why I'm glad we didn't talk about it. Thanksgiving dropped from 5 to 10. You can hear Alexis and Dorian do what they think approximates a review of that last week. God. Huh?
Be kinder.
No. Have you listened to it?
Parts of it.
Ugh. Did neither one of them take the fucking ADHD meds that night? Jesus Christ. People like he's like, oh, pop up Radulich, he has to keep everyone on track. Yeah, when I don't, you get Thanksgiving. Holy cow. Yeah, I am your brother. Mark throwing shade. You're fucking right, I am. Do better. Jesus, Mary and Joseph. Anyway, moving on.
Oh, can I tell you? You were on the show last week. When we were, he and his wife actually came through and walked in the back briefly. I should have grabbed him and had him wave or something, because he could have been on camera. He was briefly on camera for the show in the background.
The Marvel dropped from 6 to 11.
Okay, can we just?
I don't want to, because I feel like we've kicked this dog to death.
I don't want to kick it. I'm not going to gloat. Okay, not me gloating. But you know what? No, I will wait. I will wait till we do the year in review, because you're still going to do that. I know nothing's moved, but find the Marvels there, because it's about to end its only not to kick it, because it's about to end its theatrical run.
Somebody asked me, a girl I'm dating asked me last night. She's like, "Oh, what's the new Marvel movie? Like Captain Marvel?" They're like, "Oh, that's in theaters now," and I'm like, "For the next 5 minutes, yes." But wait till tomorrow, because it'll end up being on Disney Plus.
So
that thing is doing so badly they can't wait to pull it out of theaters. And then
we do have to talk about it briefly in that context, but only because it's about to end its theatrical run. Again, we're not just here to piss on Disney the entirety of our podcast. It's not that fun. The only
thing I want to say is it's the worst performing Marvel movie in its like 20-year history.
Ever.
Which is fine. That I believe. What I am struggling with is how this is a bigger bomb than Indiana Jones.
We're gonna have to double check. So some of this has to do with how much. Okay, I can tell you how. It's grossing less.
Mm-hmm.
It had a lower budget, but it had a bigger marketing. So it had a bigger advertising.
Did you see on Twitter that the 10-year $1 billion streak is broken? Disney apparently this is the worst performing theatrical year Disney has ever done. In 10 years.
For the record, going back to I think it was 2013, 2014. Every year since the first Avengers movie, basically,
mm-hmm.
Disney or one of their subsidiaries has had at least one movie that made $1 billion.
Right.
Until this year. And bear in mind, that's also charitably giving them credit for Avatar 2 last year.
Right.
But they own it, so it's a little bit of a charitable call, but I can understand it.
Here's what I'll tell you. No, there's a point that I want to make here because some people don't understand this. Avatar is a Fox property. Now, Fox is owned by Disney.
Yeah.
But it's like when you buy a sports team, you're getting what comes with the sports team. You didn't create the sports team. You were not handed a franchise from nothing and, recruited a bunch of players, got coaches, got managers, and voila, you're a new sports team. This was, you took the Dodgers out of Brooklyn and just moved them to Los Angeles. So the fucking Brooklyn Dodgers. Hi, Dad. So anyway,
your dad's one of those people, I take it.
Mm-hmm. Every fucking year. I stopped watching baseball because the Dodgers moved out of Brooklyn. You're almost 80. Please stop. So anyway, they bought Fox. Fox was
Avatar 2 was already most of the way through production at that point.
So essentially, what I'm saying is here's the dividing line and why I'm making a big deal out of this. Things Disney has created that they tried to make money with have failed across the board, 0 out of 10. Things they bought, like Fox, that were already in production, like Avatar, I'm not giving them credit for. They essentially just allowed that to happen. It's like the Sound of Fury, where it's you bought this, you threw it out there, and you just allowed it to exist. I'm not giving you creative credit for that. I'm not giving you business credit for that. You're just well, we have this thing, we might as well throw it. And then, of course, they did nothing with the Sound of Fury. They just let it exist. It still ended up beating Indiana Jones or some shit. It has some weird figure. So my point being,
Sound of Fury.
Yeah.
Sound of Freedom.
Sound of Freedom.
Okay.
Yeah, Sound of Freedom. So I'm not giving Disney credit for fucking Avatar.
Well, now again, we're also all giving everyone a pass on 2020 and 2021. Yeah,
you have to read it if you're going to acknowledge it.
My brother chiming in that Avatar 2 was in year 5 of its 10-year production when Disney bought Fox.
Yeah.
It's about right.
So again, so everything that was purely Disney failed miserably. They got a boon from Avatar. And oh, by the way, nothing has worked out with Lucasfilm, and Marvel's in decline. So again, it's not like other things that Disney has bought have been producing fruit as of late either. They got lucky with Avatar. They just got fucking lucky, and I'm not giving them credit for that.
So if you don't want to give them credit for that, fine. Most people do because it's on their balance sheet, which is ultimately what matters.
Okay. I'm not a Disney accountant. I don't have to play that game.
You mean you don't have to play by the tax law? Is that
that is correct? I play by Mark's Law.
Sorry, you just said I play by Mark's Law, and I immediately went to MARX instead of pluralizing Mark.
Marxism is the worst thing I've ever played.
It's up there.
By the way, you want to utterly confuse a 9-year-old? Play Robin Williams' Reality. What a concept. He did not understand a fucking word Robin Williams said.
That would do it, actually.
He was like, I get why you're showing this, like you're making me listen to this. Like, I understand, like, this is a different style of comedy than I've ever heard before. You know, a guy completely coked up. But he, and he's like, and I'm laughing at the funny voices that he does, but I don't understand a fucking. This all sounds like gibberish to me. And I'm like, oh, that's fine. It was the 70s and you're 9.
Yeah, but the fact that like when they announced that, like the article announcing that this is the first year, barring 2020 and 2021, that Disney didn't have $1 billion picture, they chose for the like image Mickey from Disney's A Christmas Carol when he's just sad at like Tiny Tim's grave. And it actually did spawn a bunch of people on Twitter going like, can we just talk for a minute about how this is one of the best adaptations of A Christmas Carol?
Oh my god! All right, let's
look, it's not my favorite, but it's definitely one of the better ones.
Dream Scenario from A24 went into a bunch of movie theaters, so that jumped from 16 to 12. Saltburn, which my dad said was not great, from Warner Brothers, dropped from 9 to 13.
Wait, perish the thought of your father not liking a movie about the poor impoverished being somewhat adopted by the rich and all their decadent. Just I can't believe that your father would find the lives of posh British elite not all that interesting. That this doesn't track for me, Mark. You've ruptured my worldview.
That's a rupture something else. The Holdovers dropped from
Only
7
when
to 14. You're not wrong. Taylor Swift, which we're not reviewing, you broads, 8 to 15. Monty Python re-release.
5% off there, Mark.
Thanks. Debuted at 16.
Good on the Monty Python re-release. Monty Python and the Holy Grail is still one of the funniest movies you'll ever watch.
Killers of the Flower Moon dropped from 13 to 17. Five Nights at Freddy's, the most successful Blumhouse horror movie ever, dropped from 10 to 18. Priscilla dropped from 12 to 19. I'm kind of bummed we're not going to review that. 14. Radical dropped from 14 to 20. Eileen debuted at 23. The Sweet East at 26. La Syndicaliste debuted at number 30. Pianoforte 33, and Coupe de Torchon at 35.
Mark, you were doing the French accent earlier, and now when you have all the French titles to review, you go with the American French.
All right.
Hey, guess what's changed in the top 10, Mark?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Five Nights at Freddy. I'm just gonna look a couple of observations here, and I'm not going through all this again. Barbie's still number 1. Ant-Man's still number 10.
No movement within there. It's true. No, it's true. No movement within there.
Five Nights at Freddy's is gaining on Indiana Jones.
I hope it overtakes it. I don't think it will. It's 100 million off. It's not going to do it, but that would be the height of hilarity. Was Five Nights at Freddy's beating Indiana Jones. But Mark, here's all the movies not doing well as Five Nights at Freddy's.
Creed 3, The Flash, The Nun 2, Taylor Swift, Sound of Freedom, Hunger Games, Dungeons and Dragons, The Marvels.
Okay, wait.
Oof, The Marvels.
A moment of silence for The Marvels.
Number 23 at 197 million and is about to leave the theaters.
Might not break 200 million. I think it probably will. It probably gets like 201. But The Marvels doing worse than The Sound of Freedom. What do you say about this?
It does get to a point where just like, I've said all there is to say about this.
I
don't want to kick it anymore. Like, look, every time Alexis like complains about us talking about something, I want to be like, who invited you? But she does occasionally make a point of like, we have beat something so badly to death, it doesn't bear talking about anymore. And that's kind of the place I'm at with Marvel and Disney. Like we had to talk about it because Wish is in its second week, so it's still topical. But just in general, like I can't wait till next year, and there's hardly a Disney movie coming out.
Hang on. There's hardly a Marvel movie coming out.
There's only one Marvel movie, but I mean, there's only one. There's only Inside Out 2, and Ilio got kicked into 2025. So I'm not entirely sure Here, real quick.
Can you find out? Yeah, like what Disney actually has coming up in 2024?
I will. Yeah, we'll close out the segment with a preview of Disney 2024, and it ain't much. I'm telling you that right now.
That I believe. Again, a lot of their stuff also got hit by the strike, so that got pushed. They're gonna get hit. Hey, more than anything, Disney's gonna get hit by the strike next year when all the like digital artists go on strike. Because
All right.
between Disney and the video game industry, all those people are fed up, and that's coming.
Is TriStar still part? No, TriStar's part of Sony. For some reason, I thought TriStar was Disney, but let's see here. Nothing in the month of January. Nothing in the month of February. Focus Features. Is that that Universal?
I think technically that's their.
No, Searchlight is
Searchlight. They have
Searchlight is Fox. Okay, so Focus Features is Universal.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh, nothing through the month of March. All right, the first Omen. So an Omen prequel from 20th Century Studios, April 5th, is the first thing anything coming out of that company is being produced.
Right.
In theatrical exhibition, as near as I can tell. Because I'll real quick. Universal, Republic, TriStar, Paramount, MGM, Miramax. Miramax is Disney, isn't it?
I don't know who owns Miramax.
Just hang on a second.
I will Google that. You keep doing your thing. Hang on.
So The Beekeeper is an MGM Miramax production.
No, Miramax is owned by Paramount.
There you go. Netflix, Amazon, MGM, Focus Feature, Universal, Netflix, Focus Feature, Columbia. So that's all Sony, Paramount, Focus Feature, Lionsgate, Warner Brothers, Universal, Lionsgate. The year Lionsgate.
Dude, Lionsgate didn't get hit as hard by the strike as other places, I guess, but so 2024 might be their year.
I was like 2024, the year Lionsgate overtakes Disney. I would laugh my ass off. Yeah, okay, so I'm right. So the first thing coming out of Disney Studios is through the 20th Century Fox. That's the first Omen. That's April 5th. That is it for April. May has...
Isn't Deadpool May?
Nope.
Or is it June?
Nope. All right. May has Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. That's also 20th Century Studios. So
that's 20th Century.
So through the first 5 months of 2024, 2 Disney movies, both from 20th Century Fox. We're into June. Inside Out 2.
Okay.
Inside Out 2 is the first Disney proper movie, and it's a Pixar jam.
Boy, are they really hoping that that Elemental did enough to repair some of their reputation that people will come back for Inside Out 2.
All right, so Inside Out 2 is June. Deadpool is July.
Okay.
So now we're into August. And August is Columbia, Warner Brothers, Lionsgate, Universal, MGM, Warner Brothers. Alien Romulus, third movie from 20th Century Fox. Columbia, Warner Brothers, Paramount, Columbia. And we have The Amateur, number 4 from Disney Studios. November 8th. We are into fucking November for the year of our Lord 2024. We have four 20th Century Fox films, 1 Pixar, and 1 Marvel. Let's see. Warner Brothers, Paramount, Universal, Warner Brothers, Columbia. There we go. December 20th. Robert, my love, my dear, my sweet. December 20th. Mufasa, the Lion King from Walt Disney Pictures. 1 Walt Disney Picture proper. And they have to wait till the end of the fucking year to release it. Oh, by the way, it's up against Sonic the Hedgehog 3.
I hope Sonic kicks that thing's ass.
I wish I know I have the clapping sound. I wish I had like, the drinker and all them do fucking J. Jonah Jameson laughing at Tobey Maguire.
Yes, you need to find that one and add it to your soundboard.
Yeah, or just somebody laughing. Yeah. So to make my point, and again, we here at Damn You Hollywood rely on data to inform our opinions, not prejudices. Disney has just given the fuck up. If it wasn't for 20th Century Fox, they'd have nothing.
Absent 20th Century Fox, they have one Pixar and the Lion King prequel.
Yeah, and then Deadpool. That's it. 3 movies.
Deadpool, I'm half giving this 20th Century Fox.
Well, I was like, okay, you want to throw that in the Fox fucking pool? I'll take it.
Again, I kind of do, because same thing with Avatar, right? Like,
Yeah,
where was it being produced?
I can't really argue with you.
I'm using your own metrics against you.
Right. Okay. So take out Deadpool. They have 2.
Yep.
And if you take out Pixar, they have 1.
Yep.
Okay, 1 fucking movie, and they have to wait till the end of the year.
And I'm waiting for that to get canceled or pushed back, because it's going to be terrible.
It's already been pushed back once. It was supposed to come out in the summer. It was supposed to come out opposite. It was supposed to come out opposite Despicable Me 4, and fucking Disney went. Disney looked at Illumination, which is currently looking like Brock Lesnar.
No. I'll tell you what, Disney pulled a Kevin Randleman, looked at the fight, slipped on a pipe in the back, and broke their head off. They pulled a Ken Shamrock against Kimbo. Like, we want more money. No, fine. Give me the razor. Oh no, I got cut rolling and I can't fight. Yeah.
And like I said, Mufasa the Lion King going up against Sonic the Hedgehog.
They pulled a CM Punk and showed up, looked at the locker room, turned around and walked out.
I would not be surprised.
Grandpa Simpson, when they got that, Grandpa Simpson entering the burlesque house. And he sees Bart there, walks in, puts his hat down, sees Bart, turns around, picks his hat up, and walks.
Pretty much.
Hey, we're going to release it on this date. And here's, and off to the side, Despicable Me 4. Yeah, we're going out. Just didn't even break stride.
But it's so funny, because it's like, in continuing in that metaphor, it's just like, or we're going to put Mufasa the Lion King up against Despicable Me 4. No, the fuck you won't. All right, let's kick it into December. What are we up against? Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Watch them kick that thing into like March or April.
There's a decent chance they just take the tax write-off on that one by the time we get down to it.
I fucking hope so. I hope.
Me both, man.
I hope Warner Brothers at this point buys Disney.
That's not going to happen.
No, I do, just because I want David Zaslav to start running Disney. Could you imagine?
You want him to just look at I tell you how that goes. Like, he shows up for work the first day, walks over to the Lucasfilm building, looks around, turns around,
and asks Godzilla to nuke it.
No. He turns around, walks out, and like presses a button that then implodes the Lucasfilm building.
Just drops a giant piano on it. It's
the Looney Tunes show up and wreck it.
But yeah, Cicero just shows up and gleefully wrecks Lucasfilm. I'll tell you, I would love like David Zaslav, who I just imagine has no concept of what anything means. Like, he's never seen a movie. He doesn't know what cartoons are. He's just he's totally a numbers guy.
He's about to draw the attention of the federal government for tax evasion.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, you have pissed off you have pissed off so many people with your taking tax write-offs on your movies that the IRS is now looking at this going, really? Yeah, congratulations, buddy. You got the government's attention on your loophole. Good job.
Yeah, David Zaslav is my kind of hero. Listen, he's the hero that we need right now, not the one we deserve.
The kind of hero no one wants and no one deserves.
But I do want him to show up to Disney one day, having no idea what Disney has done for the past 100 years. Just no clue. He has no idea what a Disney is. He just knows this is this company that's failing. And he's like, well, I think the first thing we need to do is get rid of your animation department and watch fucking people like jumping out windows. That'd be fantastic.
No. Okay, someone would talk him out of that and would just say, hey, how about we float a balloon on Twitter, see how it goes? When the whisper gets out about Zaslav cutting animation and Disney's stock price craters further, he'd realize it's a bad idea.
Everyone at Pixar goes, we knew this was coming.
Pretty much. Dude, the announcement would come in that Zaslav is coming to Disney and Pixar would buy themselves back.
Pixar's out on Nebraska, hiking up its skirt, hoping Apple buys it back.
Apple's gonna buy Disney, is what's gonna happen, but
we'll see. I'm still shooting for Zaslav just because he's my new folk hero. It's like Mike Tyson, the Ultimate Warrior, David Zaslav.
much as we appreciate your weird quasi obsessions that spring up out of nowhere and you latch onto for dear life, we all know that dude, if Zaslav doesn't get ridden out of Warner Brothers on a rail at this point, it'll be a miracle.
Speaking of riding things out on a rail, so the critical review.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
No surprises here.
Turns out, make a good movie, people enjoy it. Who'd have thought? Novel concept in the year of our Lord 2023.
96% on the tomato meter, 98% audience score. Top critics goes to 100. Wow, that went in the opposite direction that it normally goes in. And then audience score, it stayed the same, 98%. The AI says, with engaging human stories anchoring the action, Godzilla Minus One is one kaiju movie that remains truly compelling between the scenes of mass destruction.
You know what? Right? Needs to be said. That's where a lot of kaiju movies fall flat, is what we do between the big set pieces. This one does not have that problem.
Esme Holden of In Review Online didn't like it. So this is -1. So immediately after World War II, lacks junky fun. Ugh. In fact, it bears the stink of seriousness. It's the most white elephant film in the series, the White Zilla. Oof. If you want a pithy pull quote. We don't, Esme. We don't.
What we want is for you to go play in traffic. Oh no, how dare a movie take itself seriously? How dare there not be wacky one-liners? I demand my Marvel humor. Get bent.
I tell you, Marvel has ruined the movies. And I know
I
know our friends hear me say stuff like that and be like, what has Robert done to you? But I'm sorry. As I tell my girlfriends, I see patterns. I can't help it.
Look, man, if that sentiment was not true, it would not have had as much staying power as it has. And really, I blame Joss Whedon for that one.
Sean Burns of North Shore Movies. A hell of a sequel to Oppenheimer. Okie dokie.
You know what? I do want to see the crossover where Oppenheimer sees Godzilla. Well, like where the actual creature exists. And Cillian Murphy's Oppenheimer is like, oh no, what have I done all over again? And it's Godzilla.
Frank Scheck of Hollywood Reporter, top critic. This may be the only Godzilla movie that will make you feel verklempt by the time it concludes. And I only read that so I could say verklempt.
I figured that's why you read that.
Do a few more of these. It's hard because everyone liked it, and I don't necessarily want
everyone
to.
Everyone did. Well,
oh, look, your dad, Roger Moore of Movie Nation.
What?
I like what Yamazaki was trying to do, but his timidity and themes he might introduce to the film's native Japanese audience shows, and it muzzles his monster movie.
No. This is a guy who operates in the weirdest of all possible worlds, where he finds specificity to be a crutch, but also if it's too broad, he finds it to be weak. Like that, you're in the worst possible world there, man.
This was way too much movie for Adam Ollinger of Adam Does Movies on YouTube. Adam Ollinger on YouTube. He gets to be on Rotten Tomatoes. His YouTube channel gets, people to follow it enough that he gets to be on Rotten Tomatoes. Yet here we are with brilliant conversation, discourse, intercourse, all of it.
Well,
and yet we toil in obscurity.
Not much of the intercourse.
The superior visuals and sound are at odds with the terribly paced story and downright boring characters. It all just feels so underwhelming.
You, my friend, you can't read and watch a movie at the same time. Like the subtitles ruined this for you, didn't it?
Yeah, my kids handle the subtitles just fine. They're 9 and 12. Do better. Friend of the show, Jeffrey Howard, 401mania.com.
Jeff. I knew Jeff liked it because I've talked with him a little bit about this.
Godzilla is a much-needed reset for the franchise. The king of the monsters is scary again, as writer-director Takashi Yamazaki depicts the iconic kaiju as a terrifying force of nature for the first time in ages, returning Big G to his roots. That's fine.
Is correct.
That was all fine, Jeff.
You know what? The other thing about this movie needs to be said. I was genuinely waiting for them to kill more characters. The fact that this movie got me to a point where I was believing that they might kill various people at different times. In fact, if I have a minor complaint, you know, the woman being alive at the end felt a little sappy. But
it was okay. I'll allow it.
I'm with you. I'll allow it. But again, like, because we struggled with, like, what do we critique here? That did feel just a bit. But minor quibble, and the rest of the movie is so strong. I'm with you. I'll allow it. I'm not going to complain about it.
Last one. Travis Hobson of Punch Drunk Critics. Toho has gone back to his roots and achieved the true pinnacle of Godzilla glory with Godzilla Minus One. Well, even this idiot gets one right every once in a while.
This really is, man, one of the best Godzilla movies. Wait.
What somebody said it's one of the best movies of the year, and like I said, your brother Roger Moore is now dad. He's been your dad for a while, pal.
Look, your insistence on familial relations with these people gets weirder when my actual family starts chiming in.
I love the fact that we've been doing this for so long, and we've developed, a devoted enough audience that people are now in on the gag and participate. That makes me feel good. His other comment here, real quick. I just realized that wallpaper of Shawn Michaels looking at Triple H is Robert looking at Mark 70% of the time. Tracks.
Hang on. You got the super beard. You stuck around for creative control. I'm the religious one. And I have the capability of sidekicking you in the face, legitimately.
That's true, and I have a shrill broad as a wife.
And I just kicked Stan. Sorry, very obscure reference there for people who watched Monday Night Raw during a very specific time period.
Okay.
That tracks more than I want to admit.
Wonderful. Suck it. All right. Speaking of sucking it, next week Napoleon. Then hey, we're gonna do Wonka on Tuesday the 19th because I won't have time to see it before we do. We were gonna do it on Monday, so instead we're gonna do it on Tuesday, and I'm just not gonna do a second. And I'm not gonna do a Monday show. However, I am gonna do Sweet Tooth that week with Ronnie. The following week, Eric, we're gonna stay on Tuesday, and we'll do Aquaman. So yes, we've got Napoleon on Monday, and then for the following 2 Tuesdays, we've got Wonka and Aquaman. And then January 1st, we return to Mondays. That's New Year's Day, but we're going to celebrate the new year with Migration, the new Illumination movie, which we weren't going to do. But then both Alexis and Zach said they wanted to talk about it. You were willing to because Illumination typically puts up a product.
Illumination has earned enough goodwill that I'll take a flyer.
And then I have a girl that wants to go see it. My kids want to go see it. So I'm going to end up seeing it twice. I figured we might as well talk about it.
We all kind of just realized, hey, wait a minute. Are we seeing this anyway? Then we may as well talk about it.
That was half of why we used to do reviews in the first place. So I was taking my kids all the time.
Yeah. We're seeing this anyway. We may as well get content and a good conversation.
The January calendar got altered slightly. We're going to do Rebel Moon Part 1 on January 8th.
Nice. That looks fun.
The Beekeeper, the new Jason Statham movie, that's on the 15th.
My brother saw a trailer for that and said it looks funny. I haven't seen the trailer, but...
And then that's it for the month of January as far as Damn You Hollywoods go. But there's like shit tons of triple features going. My God, the amount of triple features and Long Road to Ruins I have going on in the month of January to make up for the fact that there's no good movies coming out.
Okay, hang on. When were we doing our year in review for 2023?
Okay, so we're adding a triple feature instead of a Damn You Hollywood, and we're doing Past Lives, Maestro in May, December, because we need to get.
Just want to do it then too.
What? The year in review?
Yeah. I don't know. Your call. Tell you what. Figure out your schedule and hit me up with it.
I was we'll do it on the back half of Rebel Moon.
Okay.
Yeah, we do it at the beginning.
Yeah. That's what we were gonna do. Okay.
Yeah,
we settled that earlier and I'd forgotten.
Yes. But yeah, we are. try to get some of the possible Oscar noms in. Robert and I are instead of a Damn You Hollywood, we're doing a triple feature of Past Lives, Maestro in May, December, and that's January 29th. February, we're doing Argyle, but we're doing it on a Tuesday because I will be at Pantera in the pit. And then I will respect walk. What do you say? If ever words were spoken, faithful and untrue. Yes.
You know I hate Clay Guida, right?
It's been a while since I've heard that. I've heard the Carpenter, but go on.
Came out to Walk by Pantera the other night.
Oh, yeah? Oh, is that where that came from?
Yep. Because that guy is over 40 and still out there bouncing around and trying to wrestle hump his way to victory in MMA in 2023, and I wish nothing but harm on him.
The man hugger himself.
Accurate description of his winning ways when he fights.
Your brother wants to know when we're doing a Tremors Long Road to Ruin. I'm so tired. We'll get to it eventually.
When you do, I do insist on being on that one.
You just be on it. I do Long Road to Ruin with everybody now. I've hoarded that podcast out to everyone. Fuck, I'm doing one with Bailey on the Flintstones.
You just... I can't say it. That might get me in trouble.
Anyway.
You just wanted an excuse to talk about Halle Berry.
You're not wrong. So yeah, we'll do Argyle on Tuesday, February 6th, and then more possible Oscar noms. We've got the Iron Claw and Ferrari. And if you're like, why are you waiting till February? Because I wasn't quite sure if either one of those was going to be available in the fucking third world country that Robert lives in of Utah. So,
I do not live in a third world country. I just live too far away from places that run more limited release stuff to make that all that viable.
So we're waiting until they both come on PVOD. But we are going to talk about them. My son saw the trailer for the Iron Claw and was he's like, when are you taking me to see this? And I was like,
please tell me he assumed it's a feel-good story. Please tell me he thinks.
Oh no, both of those kids looked at me. They were like, oh, that looks so cool. What happened to the Von Erichs?
Did you wait? Did you tell them?
I said, yeah, I didn't tell them because I told them I wanted them to be surprised at the horror.
Okay, are you taking both your kids to that?
Absolutely.
You realize you're going to have to take your daughter to like an emergency some kind of crisis team has to be on standby for Lily coming out of that.
I want to say like I'm doing like a double. Yeah. I'm doing the Iron Claw and Migration on the same day.
To watch?
Yeah.
Total whiplash there. Buddy.
Yeah. I think I need to do the Iron Claw in the morning, go take him to lunch, have him like process it, and then take him to Migration. So their last memory is a good one.
You could do it the other way, depending on how you want them to feel when they go to bed.
Suicidal? Oh God! Why did he eat that big steak?
Wait a minute. He wasn't going out there just to look at the stars on his four-wheeler.
The Von Erich. You know what I miss? I miss Chris Sheehan calling everyone Von Erich ugly. Oh, the things he used to say about Matt Riddle being the fourth Von Erich brother.
I can see it.
Anyway, there was a point that I was trying to get to. Oh yeah. So then we have Madam Web. On the 19th.
Why are we doing that, Mark?
You know the fuck why.
No, I don't.
Oh,
I will hang. No. Take a step back here. You and me collectively, we put up with a lot of crap, most of it self-induced. This is an oncoming freight train we don't have to stay on the tracks for. Is there anything else we can review that day?
I'm not pulling up the fucking calendar again, and I'm not arguing with you about it. We're doing Madam Web. Anyway, the point that I was trying to get to
yourself.
an hour ago.
I just want you to know.
It's funny. You like definitely dodged Barbie and walked right into Madam Web. It's really funny, actually.
I would technically have a pass for 2024, though.
You would technically have it. Hey, look, Ronnie is right there. Ronnie said anything that you don't want to do, he'll take. Be hilarious if he got that one too, because that's how he ended up with Barbie.
If you were in a better place, Mark, I would make you do that.
You would give it to Ronnie.
I would make you review Madam Web with Ronnie, but because I know you and I like you, and I don't want you to have that experience on top of everything else you're going through.
Wow. If we have friends after this podcast, I don't know how. Between the two of us. Anyway, and here's where I was trying to get to. Our Best Picture 2024 survey with myself, Robert, and Alexis will be on February 26th. And then we'll do like we did last year. We will look at, by that point, they will have announced all the Best Picture nominees.
Yeah.
And we will talk about them in kind. And hopefully we'll have already done Damn You Hollywoods on most of them, because I do not want to do what we did last year. I hope that was painful. That's like marathoning the Banshees of Inisherin, Tar, and what was it, Little Women or some shit, Talking Women,
Speaking, something like that.
Basic Bitches. I don't remember what it was called, but it was like I watched those all
there was
each other. Ugh.
That was a lot. Like, it was a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot.
But then and the giant turd on top of all of that was like the Golden Triangle, or the Triangle of Sadness.
Oh no, fuck you! You and Alexis did no.
That movie sucked.
Oh my god, Triangle of Sadness is so good.
It was the look. Your tolerance for what you perceive as farce is quite high, and I respect it. I know they weren't trying to trying to make a farce there, and I can't see past the fact that they were trying to be serious.
So that is our review of Godzilla Minus One. Come back next week for Napoleon. Tomorrow, speaking of things that are ending, finally, sagas, myself and Jesse Starcher finally will be concluding our journey from the corner to the deuce, which actually starts with homicide. It ends with the plot against America, but from the corner to the deuce sounds much more fun.
Because you can't go from homicide to the plot against America.
Yeah, I was like, that doesn't make any sense for my book title. Like, you know, examining the great works of David Simon, from homicide to the plot against America.
It technically be from homicide to We Own the City.
Yeah, well, we also did that we did that.
I know why you guys aren't talking about it, because we already reviewed it, but
right. But yes, from the corner to the deuce sounds much more interesting. Anyway, we finally got to the last show. I have finally seen all of the plot against America. And so we'll be
that's a chore. You agreed with me. You can't bring yourself to say something bad about David Simon, can you?
We'll talk about it tomorrow. Anyway,
save it for the actual show. Don't give away your podcast here in the end of Hollywood.
So tune in to watch me and Jesse conclude to talk about the plot against America, but also conclude our series on the great works of David Simon. And you're like, oh, so what are you and Jesse doing next? What TV producer are you examining? We're not. I can't do another 2 years of this. However, talking old television shows with Jesse is fun, and Ronnie has been grousing about we should get the band back together. So we're gonna do all 7 or 8 or how many seasons it was of Sons of Anarchy for the next couple of months. So we got Sons of Anarchy coming up. Robert and I are gonna finally do Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Mark, I appreciate your commitment to the gimmick, but we both know it's not happening. It's okay to let that one go.
It's on the schedule. I scheduled it. You mean Jesse? Ash versus Evil Dead. No, no, my love. You're getting what you want. You're getting it whether you like it or not.
Mark, I'm
going to give it to you again and again and again.
This is about as amusing as me pretending that Detective Pikachu wasn't a thing.
Or that Beastie Boys only have one song.
They do only have one song. What are you talking about?
Okay, I'm done. So, and that's
dude. Even Weird Al knows they only have one song. You only have one parody of the Beastie Boys.
So, anywho, this Thursday, my son will be on Alexis' podcast.
The one who calls you father.
The one who calls me father. He will be on a TV party with Alexis. He'll be talking Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, and Andrew Orozco will be there. That'll be fun. I'll be in the wings monitoring that. That's essentially his audition to be on more shows. This weekend, we are out of alternative commentaries at this point from years past. So the next couple of weeks will be old Screaming Boy shows that didn't make this feed. The first one being some kind of military-themed podcast. He was always great with titles. And then Metal Hammer of Doom Sundays. We've got the Metal Hammer of Doom, Killswitch Engage, Career Retrospective. That's all for me. Thanks. I'm driving. Robert?
Well, I already brought up Clay Guida, so you know I cover mixed martial arts. I cover that in professional wrestling over at 411mania.com. MLW stuff on Thursday. I'm not sure I have something this Thursday. I believe they have their next shorter pay-per-view.
Yeah, you can't do the Devin Haney fight with me. You're busy.
When is that? Saturday?
Yeah, you're busy.
No, I can't. I have UFC event on Saturday, and I don't want to watch Devin Haney anyway. He's fighting some bum.
Regis Progress? Do you think so?
Yeah, I kind of do. He's horribly outmatched.
Fair enough.
Devin Haney lost me in the wake of the Lomachenko fight.
Speaking of which, yeah, you're not going to do it, Pat's not going to do it, and Dan's not available, so I'm going to run solo, but I'm going to run solo for the whole DAZN pay-per-view. That'll be a YouTube exclusive, because Sean says I should do more of those.
Well, I wish you the best of luck.
Finish.
So I cover mixed martial arts and professional wrestling over at 411mania.com. MLW on Thursday, depending on what they're doing this week. WWE SmackDown on Friday, and Randy Orton has come to SmackDown, so that's at least an injection of new talent. And then UFC events on Saturdays. This last Saturday was actually a darn good event. UFC on ESPN 51. They were in Austin, Texas. They had to sell tickets, so they brought a good show. It was a good time. Mark, you would have liked this event. There were back-to-back slam knockouts.
Nice. Like power bombs?
One was.
Wow, cool.
One was
Shades of Rampage Jackson.
Daniel Cormier, who I have come to loathe on commentary. Watching someone get knocked out, being slammed out of an armbar, going, I've never seen that before.
I hope Joe Rogan just stood up and pissed on him.
Joe Rogan doesn't do fight night cards, Mark. He only does pay-per-views in the U.S.
Well, then I hope he was watching on TV at home and he peed on his television.
He was there in person. Joe was actually at the event. So, okay. No, there was one where a guy was in an armbar and he picked him up and he didn't spike him on the top of his head. He did kind of like you got a towel and you just kind of boom.
Yeah.
So he slammed the side of his head into the mat and just horrible thud, just boom, out cold. The other one was out of a triangle choke and was up and down. Not full on like Rampage completely power bomb, but he got up pretty good way and then slammed down. Lot of knockout. Again, it was a good night of fights. If you want my full report, MMA Zone at 411mania.com. This coming Saturday's card, not nearly as excited about. It's they're back at the Apex, so hang on. Yeah. Get the Orange Cassidy thumbs up.
All right,
and
folks.
Mark mentioned Napoleon next week when we talk about how Vanessa Kirby kind of sucks.
That's a Kirby alone. What did she do to you?
She's in that movie and she sucks.
Okay. Well, folks, thank you for joining us.
Just randomly just go like, well, we'll talk about how so-and-so is not very good at their job and they have nothing to do with the project at hand.
It's just like some of the actresses you pick at. Anyway, we'll talk more about it next week.
The ones who aren't very good and I have to watch a lot.
For Robert Winfree, I'm coughing a lot. Be well, be safe, and behave.